And welcome back to the SMITE Pro League Season 10 Kickoff Tournament. We're getting ready to hop into our second set of the day, another round of best of threes between the Dragons and the Leviathans. But I want to give a special shout to one of our new sponsors here for the SMITE Pro League, Advanced.GG. Make sure that you go over to Advanced.GG and use code SMITE for 10% off your order. All the new stuff that Advanced.GG has to offer between energy and focus supplements, as well as being able to pick up some cool apparel between their shirts. I think they got some great socks out there, as well as some of the new shaker cups as well. So many great things that Advanced.GG has to offer. And all you got to do is plug in code SMITE at the very end at checkout to get 10% off your order. Thank you so much to Advanced.GG for joining us for Season 10 of the SMITE Pro League. Our first set of the day is done, and we now move into set number 2 of our kickoff tournament. I'm J-Mac. I've got Trelly back here on the desk joining me this time. So we go into the Leviathans and the Dragons, some former teammates on these two rosters, now going to be going against each other for the first time in a while.
Technically, you're joining me. I never left.
That is true.
Yeah.
I did take over Dave's spot and have now joined you on the desk.
I do appreciate you joining me, as you know the Leviathans might expect. Adapting, joining them. You know, some really cool adaptations they're happening with the squad. I'm curious because when you take a superstar team and put it together, right? Sometimes the pieces don't fit. Sometimes they do. Are we going to get that sort of squad? Only time will tell.
And speaking of a couple of these teams and putting some star-studded names with the Leviathans, not the full team that we had in the season prior. A lot of kind of mix-ups and around. We won't have Shinto in this weekend for this event. It will be Gabeethan subbing into the mid lane for this team out there. But you're still going to have Ronngyu and Zapman over in the duo lane, adapting, now joining this team in the jungle. And then fineokay over into the solo lane. And I kind of want to dial in on fineokay and then on the opposite and also talk about the Jade Dragons. Once teammates for the last 3 years, from Season 6 all the way through Season 9, these two players have been teammates fighting alongside each other. It hasn't been since Season 4, Season 5 that these guys have had a chance to play against each other. Now, it kind of sucks we're starting on fineokay here just because he's on the lower end of the head-to-head against PBM. It's a 16-5 record for PBM over fineokay, so maybe fineokay looking to try and get that record back to a little bit more even state.
Yeah, those numbers, those aren't too good, but I assume that's just going to drive him. You know what I mean? You know, like, hey, you have the better win rate, but that's going to just motivate me in trying to dominate the lane matchup, that sort of thing. We know fineokay is a player that he's always very consistent. I think when you look at fineokay gameplay, it's almost always he's ahead, he's going even, and he's making good adaptations for the team, and that's pretty much what you want from a solo laner in any sort of matchup. I think fineokay fills that role extremely well, especially on this new roster. I expect him to look pretty much the same as we have been.
Yeah, now joined by some completely new players. Again, remember, fineokay, PBM, you throw in Panda Cat to that mix. Those guys have been playing together for so long. Now fineokay in a completely different atmosphere, playing with adapting through the jungle and playing with at least a good chunk of the former Leviathans team out here. Again, once again, Shinto not going to be joining this roster this weekend for the event. Instead, will be Gabeethan in the mid lane. And then Ronngyu and Zapman, I mean, these are players you got to talk about. Ronngyu has been heralded as definitely one of the upper-end supports in the league for such a long time. A couple of picks you never want to give over to Ronngyu. Immediate thought that comes to mind for me is guys like Yamoja, who still seem to be, at least be somewhat relevant in this upcoming meta.
Yep, I think that Ronngyu and Zap are, I was going to say the picture of consistency, but that's not necessarily true, because the Leviathans did used to play a style where they would sort of leave Zap alone and just sort of look for farm elsewhere. Again, new team. Maybe Zap could be the focal point of this squad, or they just let adapting do his thing. I think time is going to show us exactly how they want to play this new team, this new meta.
And then if you want to talk about another kind of group of players that are sticking together but adding a couple new pieces, it's over to the Jade Dragons, which when you look at them, these don't all look like former Jade Dragons players. PBM kind of heralding the name for the team, but bringing in some of the old Oni Warrior squad. Nika, Dardez, and Vote joined PolarBearMike this time. Or I guess maybe PolarBearMike is joining them. I mean, they came into the name for the Dragons, so I guess everybody joining Mike here, but LASBRA as well now in the jungle. And I wonder how this kind of shakes up the dynamic of this newly noted Jade Dragons team, because it really felt like whenever it's this Oni Warrior squad with Nika, Dardez, Vote, and then you have Cuvo, Fred, and Yilma on the team, it always felt like they were lacking just a little bit of extra push. Do you kind of feel that now maybe throwing Mike and LASBRA into this roster, that maybe that gives them that extra little bit of a boost?
I would say they've got the push. The push is here. Whether that comes from the new addition, whether that comes from a new coach. I think that the Jade Dragons in their entirety they've got a lot to prove here because this is a team, again, that they didn't quite stick together. I mean, the Oni Warriors as a whole, I'm saying. They said they felt confident as a team. They felt like they could make it to Worlds. They felt like they could make numbers. They didn't quite position how they wanted to. Now, they've got Mike. They've got LASBRA. They've got some new pieces to the puzzle. I'm excited. I think this is a squad that can definitely make some wave. This could be a top contender team if they are using all of their pieces correctly, as we know they have been able to do. It's just the question of, are we going to get that hot and cold Jade Dragons, or is it just going to be all hot all the time?
And also, another thing to kind of note with this Dragons team, or at least with PBM specifically, I mean, he's been coached by Cherio for such a long time. Now a new coach on the Jade Dragons roster as well, Sam Marbach, going to be joining the team to try and pilot this new SPL-formed roster and really see kind of what comes out of there. And I'm really curious, just in our first couple of matchups, we saw kind of two different mindsets of teams. We saw the Styx Ferryman go with this 4 damage, 1 tank style of meta, where on the opposite end we saw a little bit more of like a hybrid soul laner out of Ducky, 3 damage dealers in your traditional tank, at least out of Quig. I wonder if we'll see that same style of mentality from both of these teams, or if we see maybe something kind of a little different between them. Maybe we can take a chance, though, to kind of pick at the brain of the new coach of the Jade Dragons, Sam Marbach, standing by with Dave for a pregame interview.
Yeah, I got Sam with me. Sam, are you a big believer in dress for success, dress for the job you want? Is that a facet that you live your life by?
I am, yeah. I'm new on the scene. I'm new to be a coach, so I really wanted to dress professionally.
Yeah.
Just bring it all on day one, you know.
I don't know if you feel confident. You can use my shoulder if you want. I mean, give a kick up because he's got the paws, the claws down there too. And all the and it's warm in there if I understand correctly.
Yes.
So things going to be heating up for you.
Yes. We're in the kitchen.
Yeah, you guys are cooking, and I believe it. This maybe tracks with the personality of that team because you've got Vote, Dardez, you've got Nika, then you add LASBRA and PolarBearMike. Who's been the most difficult to wrangle as a coach of this squad? Yeah, there we go. There's the the shoe cam.
Yeah.
Those are menacing.
I think everybody's been really easy to work with.
Yeah.
Everybody's super down to try new things. I don't know. Everybody kind of brings something to pick some bands, and it's been exciting. I think we're looking good going into this season.
Well, it's a new journey for you, right? Mm-hmm. Coaching an SPL squad. Do you feel like you've taken to it pretty well?
Yeah. The guys are super helpful. Just if I have questions or anything, they're always on standby to help me out. I have the whole Excel sheet stuff figured out.
That's right.
So it's going well, and I love it a lot. So
clearly, and you're dressed for success. Yeah. Excited to see what you and the team get done this year. Thanks for standing by with me, and we'll go back to the desk to kick it off.
Now, I was going to preface this naturally. It doesn't matter what any of the scores say behind at the end of the set. That's the real winner right there, is Sam Marbach and the rest of the Jade Dragons. When your coach comes in,
I can't believe we got the Jade Dragon.
We got the Jade Dragon. We were kind of talking about ideas, who's the most Dragon member of the Jade Dragon. Turns out it's none of the players. It's actually the coach is the most Jade Dragon member of this roster. Always good to see some of the fresh talent kind of coming up into the SPL, not just in the players, but the coaches are kind of sometimes the unsung heroes of the team as well. Some of the minds that these coaches have where they may not be able to themselves execute on the battlefield, but really kind of be able to find a team that can kind of find those styles.
Yeah, and I think a good coach can bring the team together. And if I'm in the Jade Dragons booth right now, I gotta feel a little confident seeing the Jade Dragon, trying to rally the troops there. But we were talking about it a bit. Both these teams, I think the question of consistency is gonna have to come into play. I'm so excited to see how these new players will all mesh together, and I think this could be quite the matchup to kick us off with game number 2 here.
Well, the good thing is we don't have to wait much longer. We can jump into the picks and bans for game number 1 of our second set of the day. The Atlantis Leviathans and the Jade Dragons facing off. A best of 3, remember, single elimination throughout the entirety of this weekend, determining who will be our number 1 seed to get things kicked off for our draft show at the end of the weekend. Kind of divide these divisions out. We saw a pretty good emphasis on healing kind of being banned out at the start of our first set. We saw Afro, Hell, Yamoja, Terra kind of be the talk there. And I got to imagine if you're in the seat of the Jade Dragons right now, being in that second position, don't think that Afro or Hell are probably going to be let through with how much talk has been around those two gods specifically.
Yeah, surprisingly, last set we saw a lot of Afro ban from first pick. So I'm curious to see if that goes to something that the Leviathans want to take away, because I know PBM plays it a lot on stream. And once again, the Afro is going to be the first pick. It seems like if you don't have a pocket Afro player on your team, you're just banning it, right? Because Leviathan's like, hey, she may be strong, but we really don't want to play Afro, and we definitely don't want to give it over to PolarBearMike. The Hell is going to make its way through here, possibly something that Gabeethan could want to look to, or maybe the Jade Dragons call the bluff, and it looks like they will. Hell is not going to be grabbed here. Leviathans will just pick that Ishtar. Now Dardez has the option. Do the Jade Dragons want to take that pick for themselves, or is it something that's going to get overlooked? Nope, Jade Dragons are going to lock that one up right away.
Man, just now seeing the split screen between Mike and
Mike and
fineokay.
Fino, no.
Man, this is...
It's like...
This is something we only see at like our charity events, at our all-star events, where you see, you know, teammates who have been together for so long kind of battling against each other because they want to have a little bit of fun. Now it's no longer for fun. Now this is their career of this year up against each other. fineokay versus PBM now.
This kitchen's not the same without you.
It's man, that's a throwback reference right there. I haven't heard that song in years. But Ishtar, Hell, and Cernunnos now join the ranks of the Jade Dragons. You talked about at least a moment ago how the Hell did get let through. The Jade Dragons call the bluff on it. The Ishtar does get picked up for the Leviathans. But Hell, Cernunnos is the top two. Charlie, kind of give me your thoughts on this initial top pick for the Dragons.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pick that we talked about a bit beforehand. Didn't know if it was going to get through. It looks like the Afro takes more of that priority, so Hell did get some changes, as we know. Less healing, more damage. I've played a fair bit of Hell in my ranked games recently, and I gotta say, it never feels right doing damage to minions with Hell 1 now, or Light Stance 1. It still feels a little bit odd, so I'll have to see if Dardez has been playing it consistently. The Cernunnos, however, that's just a strong pick in general. I think crit is very powerful right now in the current meta. We saw the Styx Ferryman run Double Hunter. Didn't quite work out for them, but the damage was certainly there. The team fight presence of those Hunters are still very highly prioritized, so makes sense that we see Hunters both in the top 1 and I guess top 2 here for the Jade Dragons.
But now where do the Leviathans go? 40 seconds left on their bank time. Khepri hovered and Khepri locked in now for Ronngyu on the side of the Leviathans. And an Odin hover, one of the only gods in the game that can go beyond the now only 80% anti-heal as a cap, except for Odin, Osiris, and Serket both still have 100% true anti-heal built into them. So dealing with this Hell and this rather immobile team of the Jade Dragons so far of the top 2, Odin feels like it definitely throw a wrench at least into what the Jade Dragons have cooked up early on. Trelly, how do you kind of feel about at least the front line the Leviathans have built for themselves so far?
It took them a bit to lock in, which makes me question, was this a bait and saying, hey, you can pick Hell, yeah, she's really strong, baited, we have Odin Cage, but they didn't do it right away. So my question is, were they testing the Jade Dragons to say, hey, are you going to take the Hell? If so, we have answers for it, or was this a long-winded strategy they had cooking up? Either way, Hell does not appreciate being locked in the Odin Cage. I imagine you want to stack burst damage on the side of Leviathans, because if you do that, Hell either gets her own Phantom Shell and doesn't have an Aegis anymore, or forces the team into more Phantom Shells, thus just giving you more value for the other team. So definitely could be a strategy the Leviathans employ, but this is definitely a long-winded picks and bans for a reason. And Erlang Shen gets locked in here for the Jade Dragons. That's a pick that we haven't seen in quite some time. He pops his head out every once in a while to limited success. And I think, you know, he's always been that early game bully that really falls off hard.
Now we'll see the second wave of bans. Bakasura will join the mix of bans for the Jade Dragons. A little bit of extra oomph out of the Bacchus kid, a little bit of anti-heal now thrown in with him. And I've been seeing some very interesting builds kind of popping the way, maybe just because fineokay has actually been doing some Bacca experimenting in his games. So maybe a nod over towards him, potentially in the soul lane, unless this Odin was slotted for fineokay already. Then I'm just kind of having a little bit of fun speaking in that regard.
A little fun.
Just a little bit of fun. A little bit of Hera banned away. We've been seeing her kind of rise up as of recent. Some of the buffs that have come her way over the last few patches have really kind of brought her into the forefront for mid-meta discussion, as well as the Baba Yaga. We saw it twice last set. Didn't find a win, but definitely was able to nearly top those damage charts every single time.
Yep, and now it looks like with all of these mages taken away for the Jade Dragons, are they assuming that Hell is going to Mike? That's the question, because we know that Mike's got the Afro support. Has he been playing the Hell support? I'm guessing that's what the Leviathans are fearing, so they are going to take away the Baba and the Hera. And Mike's always been one to find the the quickest cringe healer build he can find right at the start of the season. I mean, right when Prophetic Cloak came out, we saw his Afro support build, and now I got to assume he's got a Hell support build as well. Gilgamesh is going to be the hover, immediately switch to the Chulainn though, so that tells me probably going the way of Chulainn for Nika. So LASBRA is going to take that Erlang Shen. At least that's still the way I'm hoping it's going based on how these picks go through. But it looks like anti-heal still something Leviathans are valuing, and the Serket is going to be hovered.
Serket hover, that adds quite a bit of anti-heal now to Leviathans. 2 of the 3 gods still with that true anti-heal built into their kit.
And then Osiris mid last.
Oh, true. Gotta get the Osiris mid to kind of throw in through there. Or maybe throw the Ishtar mid, throw the Osiris into ADC. But actually will stray away from the Serket and go towards Set instead. We've been seeing a lot of the Assassin mid kind of at the earlier stages of Season 10. Now seeing Set still kind of hovering his way through here. And then a Thoth to round out the composition. Set in the jungle for adapting. How do you kind of feel about a pick like this for the King?
I mean, Set in the jungle is a pick that if you can pilot it very well, you get early farm, you get ahead, you're going to dominate the map. I think it's got a great matchup into these mobile characters. I think you could chase down Cern and Hell very easily. But Gabeethan going to the Thoth first game, that's a power move if I've ever seen one. I mean, you want to stay back. You've got a lot of ranged artillery damage, but you need a fair amount of peel. You look towards the support column, you see a Khepri. The peel is probably going to be there. So it looks like the Leviathans are planning on keeping this set, keeping this Thoth alive, and I guess throw Ishtar in the mix. Despite the fact that usually the Leviathan's old playstyle was let Zapman die, I don't think we're going to see the replication of that this time around, but they could. There are some priority targets here that you would rather use that ultimate on.
And for a final pick for the Jade Dragons, it will be Chronos in that 10 slot. We've been seeing a bit of a decline in the mage ADCs when year 10 kind of started up for casual and even a little bit of early competitive play. We saw a lot of Chronos, a lot of Soul, Olorun, Freya was at the topic of discussion as well. Now not really seeing those mage, more traditional ADC style of mages kind of as much anymore, but it seems that a little bit of relevancy still here for Chronos to kind of round this roster out. So now looking at the Jade Dragons comp holistically with that Erlang Shen, with that Chulainn, does seem that this Hell will be going over to PBM in that dual lane. And how do you think that kind of weighs on the mental, really, of the dual lane of the Leviathans? You got Zapman, Ronngyu, you got Ishtar, Khepri, such a strong lane.
Yep.
And you got to go against Hell Cernunnos. I mean, how do you think that weighs on them?
I mean, I think we're going to watch Mike spawn in. We're going to see his first, 2 items, and immediately the Leviathans are going to go, oh, it's going to be this game. This is going to be what we're in for. And I'm excited to see it again. Mike is one of the biggest theory craft build-wise that I've seen in the support. He always brings something new, and then immediately everyone starts following after the fact. So hopefully this Hell just crashes and burns, so we don't have to see too much support in our Hell support in our game. But the Jade Dragons in their entirety, they've got Chronos ADC, they've got plenty of objective damage, they've got that cleanse. The issue is just the Odin cage. If they can get those Phantom Shells and survive the set dive late game, I think their team fight looks pretty solid.
Yeah, I think you nailed down just the amount of anti-heal that this team can kind of build, whether it be the long range from Thoth, kind of that up close at least from Set, and then obviously with the cage from Odin. Do you think that there might need to be multiple Phantom Shells to kind of try and deal with this Odin, or do you think that maybe one would just be enough, Trelly?
Yeah, I mean, they do have the Thoth, so in usual cases, Hell can just say, don't worry, guys, I'll get beads and Phantom Shell. But this is a Hell support, going to be a bit tankier. I imagine Mike picks up the Phantom Shell, and maybe you get one more, but you have to watch out from that damage that Thoth can provide later on. Shell is not going to eat a final judgment. It's going to take a bit of it off, but you're still going to be getting a hefty chunk of burst damage sent your way if that ultimate is landing consistently. Not too much CC to set up for it, but if Rongyu's on point, if the Odin cages are locking people in, I think that those ults can still be connecting.
Bit of a traditional comp for the Leviathan. It's maybe the new wave of 10.3 from the Jade Dragons. Who's going to come out on top for game number 1? To do that, we got to jump in with David Mifflin.
That's right, and maybe brothers turned into enemies, and I'm talking about you and I, Miff. I have a bone to pick with you.
Already? It's day 1.
Casters argue. It's on the bingo.
I just got here.
It's on the bingo sheet. We got to yell about something. No, I'm talking about PolarBearMike and fineokay. Played on teams together for years. Now for the first time in what feels like forever. I don't know. It's been 3-4 years, something like that. They were going to be playing against one another. Be doing it in very different ways, though, Miff. fineokay and the Odin, we've seen that plenty of times in the past. But Mike, a vocal supporter of not only Hell, but Aphrodite, after some recent changes, likes the utility style from both of these characters. And now he can put his money where his mouth is a bit. Immediately locks it in. This is not all talk. He truly does think that an Afro, a Hell support, can work.
Dave, I want to take you back 2 days. 2 days earlier this week. It was
Don't
Wednesday.
remember any of it. Yep.
Wednesday at 11 p.m. I queue up an arena. You know what I run into?
Mike.
It's Mike on Hell. I DM him. One, this is really messed up, man. It's a 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. Don't be doing this. And he said to me, Hell is both incredibly strong and just incredibly fun. That's a potent combo in PBM's hands, and I expect him to have a big performance on it. Some of the changes to Hell, I think we'll have a good idea of how they sort of ring true in the lane as it develops. The Dark stance, that first ability, now goes through walls. The Light stance now pierces minions, so wave clear, I think certainly a strength of Hell. But maybe it's that Light stance passive shift that really does change up this god. Stripping away 8% power from everyone within your passive range, just as an aura.
Yep.
I think really does change up how some of these late game team fights going to roll out. It messes with the mental arithmetic of your burst damage.
Yep.
This could be a massive disruption factor for the Leviathans.
No, it's a small moment, but I'm excited to follow along with how the solo / mid side starts develop throughout this week. We saw the Hounds going for something a little bit different in our first set of the day. Just now, the Leviathans, they send adapting over to the left side speed, leave the other two over towards mid. Does that affect anything? That's the question.
Yikes.
Adapting is back in the SPL. He'll live this time, but it'll still damage pressure from LASBRA and Dardez. And it's worth talking about Gabeethan filling in for Shinto here in this event, Miff. You wonder, maybe some of that synergy hasn't quite built up just yet in the mid.
No, I mean, a one-time sub, but I did run the history of Gabeethan. I did a little background check. I had to figure out who he was because he doesn't exactly have a competitive history. Apparently, it's just a player that had been dominating ranked, had gotten into the SPL in-houses and dominated those as well. So this was a direct call-up from Zapman. Zapman reaches out specifically to Gabeethan to have him fill in this weekend.
I've been dominating ranked. They didn't want to give me a call.
Dog, you're in plat.
I'm almost in diamond.
I'm on my up, though.
I'm almost in diamond. I'm almost there. Yeah, you know, it's a, as we talked about, one-time substitution in, but the team has some confidence in Gabeethan. Give him the Thoth, see what we can get done. Zapman dashes forward. Is that a mistake? Might be. Volt will trade out a dash of his own. Ronngyu and Zap will scurry away just fine. And obviously with healing changes, Miff, right? I mean, it's going to be a difference in numbers. But healing is still there, right? It's not like healing goes away. For Afro and Hell, they're going to get the ability level up scaling, but also plus additional actual level scaling based on their character level. So healing may be different, healing may be less, but healing, even in lane, is going to be important. Look, Mike, Vote, already back to full HP after an initial trade or two.
Maybe the most important change to healing is the out-of-combat healing reduction removal. That brawling curse, you had to get affected by an enemy god to get the full value of your heal, no longer in the game. So those dances around Fire Giant that we'd become so accustomed to in the previous healer meta, or even around the Gold Fury, I think certainly going to be here once more. Just reset your fight, completely get it back to neutral, and PBM is essentially just a fountain for you. Yep. You don't need to go all the way back to base. So keep your eyes on this Hell. And with some of the new healing item changes, you can go for the Lotus, give over some protections, rejuvenating. You've got a lot of options in the healing tree. Could really make up for some of that lack of actual burst healing. That said, in the early game, Hell healing feels very good. All healers feel very good in the early. It is a significant burst. So we'll see. Any bit of poke that happens in the duo, it's just going to favor the Jade Dragons. You can see it reflected in the HP bars already. Ronngyu down to about 60% PBM. He's going to keep Vote at 100, and he's going to keep himself pretty close as well.
Remember, we saw a lot of changes to hunter items, to lifesteal items. That's data that we're going to continue collecting over the course of this weekend.
70 item changes.
And just as many god changes
60,
as
yeah.
well. All right, so a little bit less. My fault.
I might have got it backwards.
No, either way, a lot of god changes, a lot of item changes. Remember, the pros had some time to figure this out before coming into the event here this weekend. This is where we really collect exactly how the meta is going to look over the course of the next couple of weeks. Do More looks like might be the first item here for Dardez Myth. Gained some percent pen on its final form
It's 10%. It's ridiculous.
10%,
That is
so-
an insane item right now.
And then you get 2% more movement speed. Was 4%, now 6%. Not a traditional item on a magical carry, but maybe the way Dardez wants to play it.
Yeah, it feels like Doom Orb had almost always been on the precipice. Some gods really utilized it very well. When you think of the Morrigan, it was that Doom Orb first slot, or anyone that utilizes the movement speed. Now just having 140 some odd power, 10% penetration, and movement speed on first slot feels like just about every mage can utilize it very well. A very fast stat stick, and one that I think we're going to become accustomed to seeing.
Haven't seen much from the junglers yet. Might see something from adapting over on
dash.
left while LASBRA is in mid. First blood to the Jade Dragons underneath the mid tier 1. But Zap, oh no, he's lost the trade here, adapting a bit slow on the gank,
res.
but a Scarab's Blessing from Ronngyu will save the life of his carry. And now it's Set, who's got the wheel spinning. Mike, he's going to get plucked right on back. And it's right on the edge from the Leviathans duo lane, but they play it about as well as you can given the circumstances. First blood to the Dragons in mid, but 2 kills to the Leviathans on left.
My heart goes out to Mike there. Starts up the animation for that first ability and immediately has it abducted out. Would have been able to turn it at least into a 1-for-2 trade in the duo lane instead. Good play from Ronngyu, who saves his allies' lives twice in that engagement. Speaking of Khepri, though, for the most part, largely unchanged. Still has Scarab's Blessing, still a great initiator. But with the HP shielding from his passive, I had thought we'd see a whole lot less of Khepri. Items like Erosion, taking away 33% shields, and giving over movement speed every single time it procs. Khepri can't choose to not shield. It is a passive effect. So I'll keep my eyes on the itemization. Could be a valid avenue, perhaps for LASBRA if he wants to stick to the back line a little bit more consistently. Or even for Mike himself if he's going to be running amok in the enemy back line, utilizing that reduction of power from that light stance passive. Might just make him a bit more slippery.
Could be a good erosion game for someone on the Leviathans anyway. If we're expecting Phantom Shells, at least one it'll look like Mike will have. Potentially more if that's where the threat lies for the Jade Dragons, but we'll stay tuned on the erosion itemization later on here in this game. I think we're talking about LASBRA joining this Jade Dragons team. Pair LASBRA with Nika, Dardez, Vote. Remember Hugo Fred retiring from competitive SMITE, so LASBRA trying to fill those shoes with this core 3 of the Jade Dragons. And LASBRA hit some pretty high highs throughout Worlds this last year. Played really well for the Olympus Bolts despite a 3-0 in the semifinals. And it's part of that 2 new member additions to this Jade Dragons team that really has some people wondering if Nika, Dardez, Vote are going to come alive this year more than maybe they have in the past.
I think it's probably similar in execution. When I imagined the previous Oni Warriors, it was a whole lot of Neomon, Cuvo dominating comms.
Yep.
Feels like Mike and LASBRA are probably just going to do that themselves, so plug and play for the 3 core of Nika, Dardez, and Vote. I do want to bring up Kin Size, though, briefly. Didn't get a whole lot of looks at it in the previous set, but that item is also ridiculous right now. If you're below 2,000 HP, it's a 3% damage shred. 3% of your HP removed by every single auto attack. But now it scales up. If you're fighting a tank, every single auto attack you're doing is taking away 6% of their health, regardless of the damage you've stacked up behind it. Kin Size, for my money, might be the I want to be a complete tank but still deal damage style of build. You could just go full defense afterward if you're LASBRA, and you're still a massive threat not only to the back line but also the front line. That item is one that might find its home in the jungle, considering hunters are just going down that crit tree.
Yep.
But I think it could really shift up some of these drafts and change how you want to build yourselves. If you're worried about stacking HP, you should be double worried if there's a Kins on the other side.
Wondering if there'd maybe be a meeting of the minds over on left. Adapting, rotated through. Zapman sent the ult out. And luckily for Vote, did not have to use the beads. Cleanse was out from Mike just in time. Otherwise, Adapting on a 1-0-1 start to his return to the SPL. Might have gotten something else going. But it is a purple buff invade, so putting a bit of pressure towards the Jade Dragons duo lane. Rotation out from Dardez. Again, with that Doom Orb, you can make those types of rotations a bit quicker. But Gabeethan was right there on time as well. Now, our first set, Miff, we got what? 30, 40-minute games a couple of times. Fire Giants. Yeah, we got a little bit of everything. Do you think that's indicative of the style of games that you're expecting? You think early on in these patch cycles you expect games that are a bit longer than what the average might end up settling at later in the year?
I think the answer to that is twofold.
Okay.
Anytime there is a new patch, of course, you have to figure out how you want to exploit it, how you close out the games early on. That generally takes a little bit while to develop. So I call it the emergent meta, and while people are figuring things out, generally the games do tend to go just a little bit longer. But that was also, at least armchair psychology, I'm reading into it maybe. I think that was the intent of the developers here, because there are so many new comeback mechanics.
Yep.
The Cyclops camps giving you additional gold if you're behind a couple thousand, the bounties, and how they can completely change up the game, or killing someone 4 levels below you just rewards no reward at all. So you get no experience, no gold. Might de-incentivize a little bit of the action once you start to establish that lead. If you're not able to force fights, you're allowed to just kind of hang back, collect gold from chests. I do imagine we see a shift to the meta where the games maybe stagnate around that 30-minute mark. That might become the average, whereas previously it was closer to 26, 25 minutes. For this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if everything goes 40.
Yeah. We call that the Dave buff, when you get no benefit from killing someone 4 levels down. To be clear, the buff, because I'm on the other side.
Yeah, you're 4 levels down.
Yeah, I'm on the sad side of that trade.
Well, happy for you.
Happy for me, because I'm not losing anything extra. I'm just a minion at that point. Vote.
Ooh.
Take some damage from Zapman. Again, Mike has been on time with these cleanses so far. Has kept the stun just at bay. That usually means adapting is somewhere close by, and the set is here. Plenty of pressure onto the purple buff. Haven't seen LASBRA on left just yet, whereas adapting is set up camp in the first 10, 11 minutes of this game. Now LASBRA's here. 9 turns blessing doesn't hit.
Early.
But it's still a blink forward, so the heal will come through in just a moment. Now the kitten size will shred through Ronngyu. And I'm wildly wrong about that. Ronngyu barely took any damage there. Needed a bit of assistance, so blink initiation just off the mark from Laz.
Yeah, we call that the classic Hun bots mistake, where you drop Fear No Evil, then blink in.
Right.
LASBRA does exactly that. Massive team fight tool loss. That disruption would have kept the Leviathans locked down, and now instead it's the Leviathans, with every bit of the action behind them, should be able to take this Gold Fury. Nobody in range from the Jade Dragons to fight back here. Take a peek at these mid builds, though. I mean, differentiation, Gabe has decided to go down Divine Ruin, deal with some of that healing on the other side. Instead, Dardez, a little bit more focused on damage. Spear of Desolation might just also be a ridiculous item. Now on kill or assist, it's 2 seconds off of every single one of your cooldowns, except for your ultimate. It's 6 seconds off your ultimate cooldown on every kill or assist. On Dardez, that just means you're going to have rewind all the time, so long as he's able to remain active in these fights. And Chronos around 3rd, 4th item slot, that's when he starts to come online, and he can remain active in the fight. Got to be something the Leviathans keep their eyes on.
Vote did have to use the beads this time. Another ultimate out from Zapman. Looks like shield buff got dropped by the Leviathans, but Vote on his own, putting up enough pressure to scare off adapting and Zapman. So adapting has really loved the left side of the map here. And just wanted to keep Vote maybe a bit slower. Left the solo laners up to their own devices over on right. It's a Nika fineokay lane. That's a 2-level lead for the Chulainn. We know Chulainn loves to bully out in lane. It seems like Nika's right back to his old ways, building up a bit of pressure on the right side.
Yeah, I wonder where that level deficit really does come from. Odin will struggle in this matchup until the Breastplate of Valor. Once you get that cooldown, having the access to your shield so consistently makes it very difficult for anybody to bully you out. So surprised that fineokay has fallen prey so early, especially with triple goose eggs for both soul laners so far. Totem of Skulls starts to add up. That cooldown buff starts to add up as well. I suppose that's where Nika's made his money. Nika's going to have to get involved, though, soon. Pyromancer pulled out.
Pyromancer. Leviathans would love to go 2 for 0, but the Jade Dragons steal away the Pyro. One last little bit of damage, despite the Leviathans doing all of the rest. And what's worse is Vote has been left alone on left, so it's a miracle steal from the Dragons, and also a Tier 1 tower picked up. LASBRA this time on point with the 9 turns blessing. That'll send the Leviathans defense right back. You have lost Pyro and 2 Tier 1 towers if you're the Leviathans in the last couple of minutes, and just about 2,500 gold.
I mean, that's as miserable as it gets for the Leviathans. Zapman makes the rotation, Vote doesn't, so what was a lane that was heavily going in favor of the Ishtar has now been equalized a bit. Experiencing gold now at a state of parity. You get that Pyromancer, the Tier 1 in left, the Tier 1 in mid. That is a massive swing for the Jade Dragons. Completely opens the map and desyncs the neutral objective. So now, the Jade Dragons, who have been largely playing reactive on the initiation for the Leviathans, can be the first ones on the scene for the Oni Fury on spawn. It's now on the Leviathans to find an answer. The answer's got to come from Gabe. I think this Thoth going to apply the anti-heal very easily with Divine Ruin, can do it from a range, make sure that PBM isn't allowed to just freely sustain his entire team. But if Gabe isn't able to close gap, and if Gabe gets caught out, all of a sudden the fight simplifies for the Jade Dragons. So Leviathan's goal, get Gabe in a position to get active, keep him safe. Jade Dragon's goal, kill Gabe.
Yeah, let's see if we can run down the Thoth. Mike's build continues to take shape a bit here. Prophetic Cloak still strong for the support. Into Last Gasp, Myth. So
he was telling me about this.
Yeah, I remember because we had him on the Dev Insight show, and he seemed to be a big fan of this item, and it might work well on the Hell.
Yeah, I'd gone out into the break room and I said, guys, what's the big item right now? And nobody wanted to tell me anything. And then Mike, who just lazily looks up and says, it's Last Gasp. And I gotta believe him. In an ideal world, that's 190 power for you. Every single time you apply a heal, you get 10 power for 10% missing HP. So if they're 90% down, all of a sudden you're getting essentially 2 items in one. Massive infusion of power for PBM, and already so survivable and so good at stacking up Prophetic Cloak. I think you're allowed to go towards this full damage item in second slot. It is a bit different than it used to be. I used to say power scales with healing, so all of a sudden it makes you an off tank a little bit more so, but now with the healing change, that power isn't exactly scaling there.
200 health on that item as well, so you do get a little bit of tankiness out of it. Oni Fury taken by the Leviathans, another steal here in game 1. That's gotta be Gabeethan with the final judgment that flies through. It's the man called up. Not an extensive competitive history, but makes a play for this Leviathans team, and I think that one feels a bit necessary here, Myth. That would have been 3 objectives in a row, or at least a second objective in a row that the Jade Dragons would have been able to take. And a nice play from the Thoth really brings that gold back.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not an easy composition to play into as Thoth. You've got LASBRA, Blink initiating on you, Nika can do the exact same thing, PBM slow in that dark stance makes it very difficult for Thoth to maneuver the map. So we've seen it, the majority of his impact has been from absolute max range. The final judgment for steals or a bit of poke here or there. We're going to need to see more eventually, but for now, I'd argue as literally your first look at a competitive outlook or a competitive play from Gabe. Haven't seen him in the SOC,
right.
Haven't seen him in the SEC. First step up is in the SPL against some of the historied players in the Jade Dragons. He's making a good argument for himself.
That's right, it's one big dive from LASBRA. It's just that one death. Zapman, wow, shrugs off basically all of the initiation between Laz and Mike there. Turns the damage, secures his own purple. Not much to fight over on the left side of the map, but a Pyro will respawn here shortly. Zapman heavily into crit, bladed boomerang. After the Blood Forge, Demon Blade as well. Bit different from Vote though, Myth. Devourer's Gauntlet, remember that. Lost a little bit of healing, but gained a bit of the offensive stats. Otherwise, into Bladed Boomerang, Executioner. Still on the mind of the Jade Dragons 80 carry. I think an important note, though, is that especially if the fights are going to start shifting towards right, it's no longer a level deficit for fineokay. He's been able to stabilize. I think you mentioned once you get some itemization, you're able to survive in that lane. Actually drops the tower over on solo lane before Nika did, despite a 2-level lead for Nika earlier in the laning phase. Pyromancer pulled once again. This time, though, the Leviathan secured. And Myth, you might be spot on. We haven't seen any kills or assists really for Gabeethan, but using those ultimates just to secure these objectives, maybe realizing that the fighting is so few and far between, he'll have his ult back in no time.
Yeah, don't want to leave it up to risk. Don't put it up to a coin toss. That was a heavy commitment from the Leviathans grab Pyro. Love that cage from fineokay just to separate the fight. Doesn't put anyone in it, just uses it as a wall. Creates the space and makes sure the Jade Dragons, if they wanted to go for the steal, would have to really dedicate their bodies or perhaps even the Phantom Shell. But in using so much to secure Pyro, have you left an opening around the Fire Giant? Jade Dragons seem to think so.
Didn't see if the Jade Dragons picked up the Pyromancer bomb.
Good eyes, Doug. 30 seconds.
30 seconds on the ultimate for Gabeethan. He'll get some poke on Nika. Remember, you get a stray assist or a kill off of that,
Mike's hurt.
it's going to go down 6 seconds. You're going to get it back that much quicker. Well played by the Leviathans, playing around those cooldowns, sort of slowing down this initiation. The Jade Dragons had all of their ultimates. Leviathans just waiting on the last couple. Do lose Adapting Ult. Other than that, the Leviathan's able to slow down what could have been a Fire Giant pull from the Dragons.
And it's almost completely slipped my mind that we're looking at Set in the jungle now.
Yep.
Been a while since we'd had the opportunity to see it. Junglers all of last year, just waiting for their opportunity. Might have to wait a bit longer as LASBRA finds the initiation. I think Zap's out though.
Zap will have the Scarab's Blessing and nothing else.
The turn?
LASBRA gets turned and burned and sniped by Gabeethan, who's made a few
With the
plays
back, huge
happen now
cage.
this game. 3 in the cage of fineokay, and it's a double kill for the newcomer. Adapting has one as well. Why not 3? Who is this guy? He's letting the Jade Dragons know. Could it be another quad? And it might be, but it's 3 for Gabe, 2 for Adapting, and a deicide for the Leviathans.
I don't want anyone to get it twisted. I know Zapman's the only one in the grayscale right now, but he completely shifts that fight on his own. The ultimate connecting with, I believe it was 3, the stun into turnaround play from the Leviathans. Just perfect there. The Jade Dragons, sure, the initiation is good, but considering where they were standing on the map, you got to be willing to fold at least a little bit. It's LASBRA chasing down. It's Nika up there with them. PBM leading the charge. And from there, fineokay loops his way around the back of the team fight, 3-man cage, and keeps it simple. The goal was always keep Gabe alive so he could deal the damage. Clearly, given the opportunity, he's not going to miss, and already now, going from 0-1 to 3-1, 5 out of 7 affected kills, just in a very good spot. Haven't even had the opportunity to talk about it just yet, as the Jade Dragons take the consolation prize around the Gold Fury. Tahuti got a, I believe, partial revert. Now the passive, when you're below, what is it, 25, 60% HP, it's 25% additional magic power.
Yep.
That scales off you. So if you have 1,000 power and they're under half, you've got 1250 power all of a sudden. It is a massive infusion. I wonder what we'd see afterward, because you don't necessarily need to power stack anymore. You've got so much already just from Tahuti. Instead, it's Spear the Magus. Penetration, lifesteal, additional damage, just as we become accustomed to. Gabe is a long-range artillery cannon.
Yep.
Good luck getting through him.
And fineokay deserves his flowers after that fight. Caged in 3 members of the Jade Dragons and weren't able to escape, and that's where Thoth can really thrive. You're just shooting fish in a barrel at that point. Dragons in a cage, take your pick. Tier 2 tower now under siege by the Leviathans. Dragons got to be careful not to give up too much. This game still close enough as far as gold goes, but
That's going to change
yeah,
quick.
it's going to change here quickly. Tier 1 tower, likely a Tier 2 at some point in the next few minutes. Remember, it is a shorter fire giant buff time. Only got a few minutes with it around your waist, but you're still able to make some waves in that time.
I like this timing as well in the back. Regroup, stack up, move in towards the Pyromancer, put a second runic bomb in your pocket. All of a sudden, Tier 2's Phoenixes become very easy to knock down. The difficulty of that back is with the reduced timer on Fire Giant and the enhanced size of the map that we've seen in Season 10, it's twofold. It makes it a little bit more difficult to actually knock down these birds on first Fire Giant rotation. So take it slow. Don't leave it up to risk. Extend your lead as much as you can before we get around towards Fire Giant number 2. And so far, the Leviathans have done so very well. I wonder, are they going to leave that runic bomb on the ground, though? Maybe fineokay. Yeah, he'll rotate through and pick it up. Keep my eyes on him. He does. So now, what does the base defense look like from the Jade Dragons? It's not exactly great, Dave. You don't have standard AoE damage. Chronos largely single target. You could say Hell's got it, but not with this build, not this early on. Instead, that's a frontliner. So keeping waves out going to be very difficult for the Jade Dragons. And even if you want to, Chronos doesn't exactly have the most range from the Mage tab, which just makes it even easier for Gabe to keep applying that damage, which is quickly starting to stack up.
I'm wondering if either team would see an erosion, especially with Ronngyu on the Khepri. Also, upgrades into the heroism, so any hard crowd control is going to be granting a shield there as well. Important for the Jade Dragons to maybe consider a bit later on here in this game, but you know, if it's Mike who's buying it, he knows if he can really afford that right now. He's dropped to 0-2. Rongyu's put together a wonderful game so far. 100% kill participation alongside Adapting. That was a big conversation with this Leviathans team coming into this year. How is Adapting going to slot into this squad? The Leviathans have a very distinct play style. They play around one another very well. And specifically, how's Adapting going to play around a farm-hungry mid laner and what we know Shinto can be?
Hasn't had to deal with it yet.
Hasn't had to deal with it yet. But now the question is how he's going to play around a brand new mid laner and Gabe. Seemingly has worked out just fine. 3-0-4 for Adapting. Also 100% kill participation. Things looking good for the Leviathans here in their first foray.
Yeah, I actually really do love this build from Adapting as well. Bloodforge, worth noting, now has attack speed on it, so synergizes well with Set's passives, Crusher having attack speed, massive power infusion, getting that HP shield. Adapting shreds the backline. He's got massive burst potential even when compared to LASBRA on the other side. And he's got similar auto attack presence, maybe even a bit more against squishy targets. LASBRA going to be much more effective against the tanks of the Leviathans, thanks to kin size. But if Adapting can close gap on a Dardez or Vote, and just left alone with them for maybe 2-3 seconds, a couple auto attacks, should be able to take them off the map pretty quick.
Double Runic Bomb is available for the Leviathans, but it looks like that's not going to be an issue. The Jade Dragons simply do not step up. There is still some scaling to be done, Myth. I mean, you've got a Chronos out of mid. You got Vote on a Cern, so he'll scale up a little bit. Poly now picked up for Dardez. So if there is a split push Chronos happening, Poly will help in chunking down some of those structures a bit further. But it's time for base defense consideration for the Jade Dragons, and it looks like a lot of dive in from the Leviathans.
I'm going to pose a question, and as an analyst, I know it's
fine.
It's
Just
off
know
the
who you're
norm.
asking the question to, Myth. Remember,
Yeah, I'm asking it of chat and of the world.
All right, well, remember who you're asking the question to, right?
Rada, Tahuti, and Polynomicon together. I wonder if the passive of Poly also benefits from the passive of Rod. 25% additional power on targets below 60%. If that's the case, are you benefiting from that on your auto attack? If so, Polynomicon's going to one-shot somebody, especially with how you line it up. Connect the stun, they're probably already under 60%. Connect the auto, that might be the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't know the order of operations
The
there,
PEMDAS.
but it would make sense in your line of thinking. Let's see what Dardez can get done. Ronngyu dashes forward, doesn't have an escape. Maybe that's right where he wants to be. fineokay has used the cage. Phantom Shell still there for Mike, so wasn't that impactful, unless you consider the fact that the mid lane Phoenix is gone.
Good lord.
Is important. Leviathans officially crack the base of the Jade Dragons, but all 10 players still on the map.
Man, did you see the damage output from Gabe onto Vote there? That was, what, 1 proc of his first ability? Did about 20-30% of Vote's HP bar.
Myth, one of the bingo things was you talking about anime.
I haven't done it yet.
No, and I'm going to force you to.
You can't.
What anime character is Gabe most like? Largely unknown, kind of comes out of the shadows and then smacks around the opponents and then disappears. Which...
You put me on the spot, man.
All right, I'll let you think about it.
I've got an encyclopedia of 1,000 completed anime in my brain. I'm not going to run through the millions of characters I've interacted with.
And you don't know one character that's come out of the darkness and won a fight and
he's hero killer Stain, man. He's rolling up on established characters and just dealing with them.
Yeah, see, there we go.
All right, whatever.
And I got it out of you, Myth.
That's one for your bingo board.
That's one for your bingo.
Enjoy.
It's already halfway done. Anything that has to do with casters, we've crossed off the list.
Are we that predictable?
I think we are.
Oh, no.
For one set into the year, not just the weekend, but the year, we've gotten a lot of stuff. One of them was Dave laughing. That happens once every 15 minutes. I mean,
it's a way to live. I wish.
You have to, right? Leviathan's doing a bit of laughing the way that game 1 has gone. Now, still stretching it out here, 27 or so minutes, but far and away ahead. They're going to control the next couple of minutes as well. Remember, with the new Fire Giant timing, we are officially back to there being a 1-minute cooldown period. After the Fire Giant falls off, it'll take a minute for it to respawn again in the SPL qualifiers. We saw teams where the Fire Giant drops off and it immediately respawns. And so if nothing else, Myth, it does give the Dragons time to decide and potentially ward up should they choose to defend this next FG.
And I think they should. It's relatively easy to deal with those mid-enhanced waves, and your team fight under Phoenix is just not great. We talked about it earlier. Base defense, not what this composition was built for. So this strategy, looping around the jungle, they might just be behind the Leviathans here. I'm looking at the wards on map. I don't think the Leviathans should be privy to the positioning. So if the Jade Dragons can just jump onto Gabe, or even adapting, would make it so much easier for them to execute on the fight. But with the Leviathans also 5-man deathballed, and with the minion wave now in the Titan room, I think the Leviathans should absolutely know what's happening. The Jade Dragons are somewhere in the jungle trying to spring a trap. Why else would they allow their Titan to take this much damage? All the Leviathans need to do is wait them out. As long as they don't walk into the Jade Dragons, this is a clean win for the Order side.
Jade Dragons have flipped things around. I saw a ping just
another wave.
Ago. Fire minions officially reach the Titan. Atlantis Leviathans pull the Fire Giant. The teams are flip-flopped as far as sides of the map go. fineokay's got a real easy cage here, but there's a Phantom Shell awaiting. There's no follow-up on the end of all 5 members of the Jade Dragons being corralled by the Odin. But Now the Dragons stepping forward, decent cleave damage. Remember, this is where Gabe can make some money. These small corridors where abilities and ultimates are connecting on everyone. Nika rooted in place. He'll salmon leap away. fineokay does the same, but he's
Massive
forward. And where's Zapman? Where's adapting? They're on the front line, and it's a double for the Ishtar. Gabe makes his mark once again, and suddenly the Dragons are no more, and Game 1 is no more, and that is clinical from the Leviathans in their start to Season 10.
Just far too aware of the map where the Leviathans there, realizing the Jade Dragons are behind him, the immediate reset on the Fire Giant, and it's hold, backpedal, and sink damage into the backline. All the Leviathans had to do was keep Gabe alive, and he thrives. The Jade Dragons need to figure out that dive, or maybe just figure out a ban. Don't let this Thoth through again, because he was impossible to deal with in the last couple of team fights. Shouts fineokay as well, 4-man cage, just buy some time. Even with the Phantom Shell, it wasn't Phantom Shell, continue walking forward, it was Phantom Shell, oh, we can't walk forward, Gabe's shooting at us.
Right, Phantom Shell and sit still just in case we need to leave. That's top damage, by the way, for Gabe. What a fun story. I mean, it's a situation where this team, the Leviathans, have got to find someone to play mid here at this event. And Gabe, with plenty of question marks, literally, who is this guy, right? I mean, Zapman recognized him from ranked, and maybe that's where some of this really builds up. And he goes top damage, and I think 4-1 on a Thoth against some of the best players in the world. I think that's quite a statement here from this Leviathans team. There's plenty of ways to look at that. Not only talented is Gabe, but this Leviathans team good and has a formal identity for moments like that.
Yeah, I mean, it just looked like the Leviathans stick to their guns. Similar shot calling that we've seen from this core team for the last couple of years. Keep it clean, don't overcommit in the early game, don't overheat, farm up, play as a team, 5-on-5 engagements around the Fire Giant, and once more they execute on it very well. Gabe actually reminds me of one of the SPL historied players. For those of you who've been watching the game for a long time, Jaco Malfoy comes to my mind. Same role, both play mid, both don't play ranked, both have no competitive history, show up to the SPL, and just look good.
And both have a first name in their gamer tag. Got to be something there. Leviathans, sure. Don't make fun of me, Miff. I do that enough for myself. Leviathans, they take game number 1 over the Jade Dragons. Could it be a 2-0? Could it be a Gabeethan 2-0 over the Jade Dragons? Stick around and find out.
Well, maybe in a bit of a Game 1 upset, the Atlantis Leviathans with their substitute mid laner come out on top to take down the Jade Dragons for our Game 1 of our best of 3. And if you want to support any of our Pro League teams and rep your favorite ones out there, well, we got all kinds of brand new jerseys for some of the new teams that came through, but also some updates to current teams' rosters out there. Make sure that you go over and pick up the new Skulls merch for our teams for Season 10 of the SMITE Pro League. We got jerseys for all 8 of our teams, yes, including the 4 new brands that have jumped up into the Pro League. Go to shop.highresstudios.com/SPL to make sure to pick up not just a jersey, but also a hoodie or a couple of t-shirts for each of your favorite teams. And we've got some for the Jade Dragons and the Atlantis Leviathans as well individually. So make sure that if you want to rep your new favorite teams out there, or even some of the new up-and-coming ones, then go ahead and head over there. Thank you so much to Skulls for coming back for Season 10 of the SMITE Pro League. And as mentioned for Leviathans, coming into the set trailer, you have a lot of veteran talent there. You have players like Adapting, fineokay, Zapman, Ronngyu, and then you have the sub that a lot of people, if you're not playing the ranked, if you're not playing SOC, kind of the lower end amateur scenes, you may not have heard of Gabe before. But this game, Gabe really popped up. If you didn't know Gabeethan before, you certainly know his name after this game.
Yeah, I think had a fantastic performance on the Thoth. Thoth's a difficult character because if your team's not doing the right job, it's hard for you to even exist. You kind of just get ran at. But I think because of the veteran talent that was surrounding Gabe, he was able to free cast, and that's any Thoth player's dream. You can sit in the back, pretty much uncontested. He showed up to these objectives, stole them away multiple times, just got some good vision, and then able to sneak out, and that's exactly what you would want from a Thoth player. I also think we were sort of letting the Jade Dragons get away with this sort of draft because new meta, maybe these things are good, but it didn't seem like their team fight had any real cohesion, I guess. It was like, hey, let's get these warriors in to dive and then hope that Mike's cleanses and speed boost is enough to carry us through this team fight. I wasn't a big fan. Once fineokay went in and got a big cage and then adapting's in the back line, it just seemed like the whole team fight would fall apart pretty consistently. I'd be surprised if we saw a similar draft from the Jade Dragons in game number 2.
Yeah, Leviathans just throughout the early game gave Gabe a lot of space on this Thoth, gave him a lot of distance to play with during these team fights. Able to come out 4-1-6 for the substitute player. A 4-0-8 performance out of adapting and a 3-1-7 for Zapman on the Ishtar as well. Top player damage does go to Gabe, at least here in game number 1. So a great performance and a good look out of the new Atlantis Leviathans. Obviously, Gabe being the sub into this team, we'll be seeing Shinto later on during the season, but even still, being able to step into the shoes that Gabe is throwing on here, you're looking at the talent around you going, man, I got to play against, like, those guys, the Jade Dragons, you know, Mike, some of the former, you know, Oni Warriors players over there as well, you know, LASBRA. These are some long-standing names in the competitive scene of SMITE, and jumping up from somebody who is like literally leagues below them, just in the sense of they haven't played up to the SCC, the SPL just yet, stepping in and having this level of performance. Got to be a good confidence boost for the Leviathans moving into the picks and bans for game number 2.
As far as I'm concerned, Gabeethan is only not in the SPL because he didn't want to be. You know,
He didn't want to be.
now he wants to be, and now he's online. We'll see if he can have a similar performance, or if the Jade Dragons don't want to deal with something like the Thoth. But again, I'm thinking completely different draft switch up. Maybe you throw that hell over to mid if it gets through next time, but I think the amount of die that the Jade Dragons had really didn't come through for me there. The Erlang Shen as well, a pick that I think probably belongs in the back burner. A smart call, though. The Khepri being taken away from the Leviathan. So much of your dive it's one of those things that we don't get to see, right? Maybe LASBRA goes, hey, can we go in here? No, we can't. They have a Khepri, and they back off. So a lot of that value from their comp could have been shut down just by one pick from the Leviathans. Taking away that Khepri might open some doors for them.
We do have Terra, Susano, and Afro banned away by the Atlantis Leviathans. Jade Dragons take the Emoja and the Khepri, as you highlighted there. Now we wait for the final ban for the Jade Dragons. They let the hell through a second time, and maybe hopes that the Leviathans don't pick it again. Maybe see if PBM can grab that god for himself. Instead, we will, for now, see a lot of respect thrown towards the sub for Leviathans, as it is a Thoth ban as the third and final ban for the Jade Dragons. Now option goes back over to Leviathans. A lot still open on the table. We saw a first pick Ishtar in game number 1. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw that run back for game 2.
Yep, the Khepri is not available, so thinking maybe the safety of that pick could change their thoughts, but it won't. That Ishtar is going to be grabbed pretty much immediately there for the Leviathans. First notable change would be shown here, if it's not going to be the hell lock-in instantly, but that Khepri and that Thoth taken away does mean that the Leviathans have to change up a bit of their strategy as well. They won't have as much as that range damage. The jungle fights that were going so well for them because of how much damage the Thoth was able to do in those small little corridors also is going to be taken away. So it looks like there will be a bit of a switch up here. The Hercules is going to be a pick that I think is going to be on the rise here. With the itemization changes, some of these new items, Sekhmet Scepter in particular, I think could be very key on a Hercules solo. Follow that with the Cernunnos, and you got yourself a pretty solid top 2 there for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, it really feels like now that the kind of mage ADCs have been somewhat pushed out of the meta by the physical hunters, we're kind of seeing a return to what we were watching near the tail end of Season 9, which is the Ishtar Cernunnos kind of dual lane style. Hercules as well now jumping up into the mix with the Jade Dragons. Now with the Khepri banned away, I wonder where the Atlantis Leviathans do go with their draft, because it was a Khepri into an Odin for the next 2 of the Leviathans. The Odin's still available. Both these gods would struggle to get out of the Odin cage should they get trapped inside. But it doesn't feel like it's as kind of immediate as a threat right now of picking up the Odin, do you think, Trelly?
Yeah, I think it was an answer to the hell and just a good team fight tool. Certainly still gets value against Cernunnos and Hercules, but not that immediate snap lock there from fineokay. Maybe wants to find something that can fight decently well into the Hercules. Remember, the more you hit him, the angrier he gets, the more damage he gets. So it's kind of annoying to actually try and trade with Hercules in lane. You usually just want someone who farms pretty cleanly and can get away. But gonna prioritize the adapting pick. Gonna grab the Mercury, and oh yeah, Maui still exists.
Oh, wow.
And he's still pretty strong.
Oh, wowie, Maui is back.
Nice.
Now for the Atlantis Leviathans alongside the Mercury. So it looks like a lot of late game hyper carry for adapting, who was able to get it done kind of through the early game as the set last time around. So I wonder if this now slows down the momentum for the Atlantis Leviathans. But at least maybe for me now, Charlie, I'm kind of looking at this composition for the Leviathans. Obviously with the Thoth banned away from Gabe by the Dragons, now could be a couple more mid laners banned away from him if the Jade Dragons choose to do so. So it kind of makes me wonder then, where does Gabe go with his pick for Leviathans in the second half, and where do the Dragons put their priority right now? It's at least with their dual lane by getting that Cernunnos, maybe the solo for the Hercules, though. When I do see the name PolarBearMike on a team and I see a Hercules, I always think back a few seasons ago when him and Aurora were kind of running the scene on a pick like this. So
That
could
is
see
fair.
maybe see some flex on this pick.
Yeah, could be the call, but that looks more like a Mike pick to me once the Nox gets
Is
locked
he
in.
turning into the villain of the league now?
Yeah, Mike's always had a little bit of villain in him, you know. I think he likes to create some chaos, and Nox will certainly do that. A lot of CC here for the Jade Dragons. And as you said, what do you look for in mid? Maybe we just stick with the bird theme. I wouldn't mind Ra. He got some buffs recently to that Searing Pain. Could be a fun time. Not too much setup so far here from the Leviathans, but could be interesting just to see more of that sustain as well as some decent damage, and the true damage on Ra can start to add up. But in this case, you're up against a Nox. You're up against a Hercules. Immobile characters that really need to hold onto their beads aren't as fun. Things like the Ra, where you don't really have a movement ability to get away. You just have to try and juke the grab and hope that you don't get CC chained. Lose a little bit of value there. Especially when you have adapting Mercury on your team. You're sort of just sitting back and letting him get online and say, hey, whenever you want, come to my lane, get a rage stack, and then go back on your merry way. I'm thinking safe farm, the Tiamats, the Babas, that's actually going to be taken away. The Merlins, those sort of things still do get some pretty good value here.
So it'll be Odin and Vamana banned away by the Jade Dragons, Fenrir and Baba Yaga by the Atlantis Leviathans. So still quite a few mages up for both of the mid laners of these two teams, assuming that this Nox traditionally will be going more towards the support role, at least for Mike, and then the Hercules over towards the solo lane for Nika. So I wonder what mid lane, maybe mage. We saw a little bit of assassin kind of earlier on in the year kind of jump itself into the mid role as well. Maybe we see a hunter pop over there. We did see a Chernobog solo earlier on to the day. Didn't work as well in the solo lane, but we'll see what does go through. Hera was actually banned away last game. Now we'll see its way over for the Jade Dragons on their roster. Has seen some recent buffs as well to her kid. Makes her just a little bit more powerful in that mid lane.
Yeah, and it's a pick that Dardez was going to even before those buffs, so
True.
it definitely could be something scary. You got to watch out for how much damage Hera can bring when you don't have that mobility, especially if adapting goes deep to the back line, doesn't have beads, gets knocked up, that sort of thing. Could be trouble for a diver like Mercury. But with that being said, you also have a very immobile character in Hera, so fineokay could look to be a big bully over onto that immobile mage. The Poseidon is going to be the hover, though. This could be another free relic pretty much every time that Kraken's available. I mean, Hera can shield, but it's not going to eat a Kraken, right? You need to make sure you're beadsing and running away or aegising. So if you get knocked up, could be trouble. And it looks like the Ama could be the hover as well. That'd be a great tool to dive down that Hera after the beads have been expended by the Kraken.
Now I don't want to jinx the Leviathans, and I don't want to put the jinx on the Gabe. But historically, now on our bingo card, there is a Fire Giant Steel.
Right.
And historically speaking, Kraken has not been great for securing FGs for teams.
That is true.
Well, maybe we could see potential Fire Giant Steel, although with how on point Gabe was in game number 1, I would imagine we would see a slight like that in game 2. But Poseidon Ama, as mentioned, to round out the draft for the Leviathans, Jade Dragons, one more selection for them, looking for what I imagine to be the jungle for their team. Still quite a few options there, but the Susanoo and the Fenrir both off the table from earlier on. The Vamana still has some flexibility, but we've been seeing a lot more in the solo recently. That's been taken out. And then Mercury for adapting. Batz immediately now locked in for LASBRA. And how do you kind of feel about this Dragon's composition now? You know, when you think about the Nox, you think single target lockdown, quick, easy beads burn. You think that having this Batz on the team maybe makes this Nox pick and maybe kind of makes this Jade Dragons comp as a whole feel a little bit more powerful?
Yeah, I mean, the only way that you can really warrant the Nox pick is if you're getting those beads down for something, right? Getting the beads down just for the sake of getting them down is great, but you gotta have something that follows up on those beads being burned. In this case, the Hunbats, I think, provides that pretty well. The team fight of the Jade Dragons does look solid, assuming, of course, that Mike is on point with the Nox combo. And he's pretty on point whenever he plays, so I imagine that will be the call. Try and burn some beads, let LASBRA come in after the fact. Huge fear, no evil. Turn the tides of the fight. They have a lot of characters on the side of the Leviathans that really want to hold on to those beads. Mercury and Poseidon specifically. You want to get to the backline if you're trying to kill a Hera, a Hunbats, a Nox, a Cernunnos as adapting. You'll want to make sure you can aggressively beat those abilities so you can actually get those crits off, get those big auto attacks. So it's going to be an annoying mid-game for adapting. If he gets ahead, of course, he's just 9-0, has rage attacks, and he just W keys. But you have to play Merc very well in the early to get to that point, and there's a lot of CC's got to deal with.
Yeah, an immense amount of CC, and not a whole lot of CC immunity in that regard as well. The Poseidon lacking any kind of inherent CC immunity, so I gotta imagine Beads is immediately on the mind for the Leviathans. Mid laner Gabe kind of having to step up against Nox, Hercules, and Hunbats, all massive CCs of their own. And that didn't even include like the polymorph that comes from Hera, really that deceptively dangerous CC that does come from this pick. For Leviathans, so what's kind of their time frame win con for this kind of composition?
I think the Leviathans are not really worried. They've got a very solid late game with Ishtar, Mercury, and the Poseidon. Ama is just going to get better and better with that aura as well. It is more so on the Jade Dragons to try and make sure they're pressuring the early game, getting those beads down, fighting around key ultimates. But team fight-wise, the Jade Dragons have hedged their bets pretty well, right? As long as you've got Fear No Evil, as long as you've got Argus, you're not too worried. Even if you get behind, you still have the abilities to turn the tides of a fight. So it looks like they're trying to, you know, diversify not just their early game pressure, but also, hey, if we catch you out in the jungle, we can still scrap. Things like that.
Yes, for the Jade Dragons, maybe try and get there, maybe punish this mid lane a little bit, utilize a lot of the CC that they have in their kits to try and lock down a couple of targets here and really show us what this Nox support is capable of, because we haven't seen the Nox support in some time. It's been a while since we've seen, namely Jake, kind of be the one to really bring this one out there. So now seeing it into Mike's hands. We'll see if the Jade Dragons can bounce back in game number 2 and take us to a game number 3, or Leviathan's going to run straight through for the 2-0 to find out. Let's jump into game number 2 with Dave and Myth.
Some of the tendencies of this Oni Warriors core of the Jade Dragons now. Still standing by with us, Myth, as we go into Season 10 of the SMITE Pro League. Dardez over on the Hera is more mainly what I'm referencing here.
It's like the only thing.
The only thing. No, LASBRA, but he was bolts. All right. I didn't quite think through my statement.
We fell apart on first sentence.
I would argue.
And you gotta now.
I would argue that Dardez and his god picks
Yeah.
is maybe one of the largest facets of that previous Oni Warriors team, and the way that Dardez drafted was pretty set in its ways.
Nika and Vote fans are mauling right now.
No, but what I'm saying is as far as the team and their priority goes, I don't know, Nika was pretty flexible over in the solo lane, Vote was as well, but Dardez kind of had a specific few picks, and I was wondering if that might change on a new team, and he's still playing, I guess, a Chronos mid and a Hera mid, and I think I've made my point.
Dardez is still playing Dardez picks. I'm right there with you.
There we go.
The only thing I think
Let's
he's
go.
probably upset about is that Aphrodite is now a top pick, top ban.
Yeah.
So one of his eclectic picks essentially just taken away from him.
Do you think we're
and the
playing
rest of the league.
Afro in mid anyway?
Oh, maybe not with protections as they are.
You nearly went overwhelmingly yes.
I almost did
Okay,
just because it's Dardez.
I think on a team with Dardez and Mike, if Afro's getting played, I think it's going to Mike before it's going to Dardez.
Yeah, it kind of has to with
I
how the
think
Kiss
Mike
change
is too
plays.
big a fan of Afro.
But Kiss does damage now too.
No, right? I think it can be played in mid. But I think on a team with Mike, if we see the Jade Dragons pick Afro, I would assume it goes to Mike first.
Fair assumption.
That's my guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. It should go to Mike.
He's sticking with mage supports. Now he's gone Nox. Mike is set out to be as annoying as possible in the first couple of games or sets, I guess, here in Season 10. Goes Hell in Game 1, over the Nox here in Game 2, Myth, and supply some lockdown, silence annoying. Maybe a little bit of extra disruption on the top of that as well.
Yeah, I don't know that Nox received too many sweeping changes or whether or not itemization really shifts up her playstyle either. I think what we become accustomed to seeing in Season 9 with Nox is probably what we're largely going to see here. But I do want to say, this Jade Dragons draft might be one of the most dominant drafts I've seen with a lead. If they're able to establish a concrete lead across the map, maybe 1 or 2 levels here or there, a couple thousand gold, the lockdown potential, the 1v1 potential for each of these picks, all incredibly high. If Nox has a lead, all of a sudden it doesn't matter that she's in support or defensive, just the scaling on her abilities, incredibly powerful. Could be very scary. That said, I don't exactly know where they find that lead. Looking at what the Leviathans have drafted and how they scale into the late game, if the order side just plays passively and farms up, could be difficult for the Jade Dragons. And in an even 5-on-5 state, let's say 25, 30 minutes in the game, I might just straight up prefer what the Leviathans have got on their side. Just consistent DPS, plenty of win conditions that are clearly definable in the team fight, Sonic Boom, Kraken, a landfall. Whereas the Jade Dragons need to play perfectly around their CC. I think that makes their win condition a little bit more narrow.
At least over on the dual lane, things feel comfortable for now for the Leviathans. I mean, it is a dominant dual lane. Not only Ronngyu and Zapman as players, but a Maui and an Ishtar should be able to find pressure in a lane up against the Jade Dragons. But also early in the year, and this is a conversation we'll have not only this weekend, but in the first couple of weeks of Season 10, where is synergy? Are the teams that more or less stayed the same a bit more comfortable? Looks like Mike is going to win that trade. Ronngyu left a bit more empty-handed. So Ronngyu and Zap have this nice base, right? A few years of playing with one another, World Championship together. Could be an advantage for the Leviathans early on in the year.
Could be. Just synergy, realizing when you need to be in that lane, when Zapman wants to get aggressive, Ronngyu can rotate back through, PBM still learning the tendencies of Vote in that lane.
Or do you think that's actually not as big a factor as we make it out to be? Do you think it's easy for Mike and Vote to load in? They've got their skill, and synergy builds up quickly when you get to a high enough level.
I mean, certainly faster, right?
Sure.
And he's played against Vote so often that you might just know some of his tendencies, but I think there is a significant advantage to being able to play with your allies for a long time. Teams that stick together tend to do relatively well.
Could be 3v3 over on left, adapting, charging up the Sonic Boom. It's a Fear No Evil down from Laz, and man, the Jade Dragons not even able to secure the shield buff. Zapman is going to get it, pick it up. Ronngyu has really controlled the left side of the map here so far. Adapting will send that Sonic Boom right down the mid lane. Dardez left running. This is where some of that lack of mobility, what we talked about with the Hera, could be called into question. Argus was there waiting anyway. Dardez will be fine. Sticking with that Doom Orb start, though. It was Chronos in Game 1, Hera here in Game 2, and Doom Orb all the same.
Surprised to see Adapting hold on to his dash post-ultimate there. Thought he'd try and commit, maybe burn off the beads from Dardez, or if Dardez gets greedy, toss him towards Gabe. Keep it a bit simple. Maybe concerned about the turnaround potential of Hera with that ultimate. Just holds on to it, escapes regardless. So Dardez, nothing burned there, just forced back a little bit to resustain.
Oh, I thought you were gonna.
I thought that pull landed. I was gonna get out for your team fight. Yeah, it's been a while for us too. We need the synergy up.
I know. We're knocking off the rust a little bit here. To be honest, I agree. I was wondering if that landfall would have hit. Didn't. But Ronngyu is played plenty aggressive over on left. What's interesting is something we talked about with Adapting, right? Especially in the STC and SPL of past. A player who takes his time, farms up in the first 5-10 levels, right? Eventually around the mid game starts to make his mark. Now there's a fight. This time on to Voto. The bead's well timed. Adapting connects, and that's first blood. LASBRA goes up and over. Doesn't have Fear No Evil. Not just yet. A silence from Mike is needed, and it's there. LASBRA will scurry away, but Mike needed on the assistance. And right as I'm talking about, I was going to say we've seen Adapting get a bit more active a bit earlier than I'm used to. A couple ganks, and this one finally strikes, and it's first blood to the Leviathans.
I can't believe LASBRA walked out of there alive, Dave. Jumps over the wall into 3 alone without his ultimate and no blink up. Adapting maybe could have beads the Shadow Lock from PBM and continue the fight, but maybe doesn't trust his damage just yet. Decides to reset it. That is a wild decision for the jungler of the Jade Dragons. I'm glad Doug decides to put the camera over on the Soul Lane. Hercules receives a lot of changes in 10-3. Mainly, Driving Strike and Crushing Earth, or that second ability, the pull. Now on synced cooldowns, both on 11 seconds, don't scale whatsoever. At level 1 of each ability, you've got 11-second cooldown. Just makes it so easy to find those combos. The only trade-off is his healing has just been blanket nerfed. I believe 10% less from the return damage and a significant loss to the burst healing off the rip of the ability. But what he loses in sustain makes up for in consistent crowd control. I'll be keeping my eyes on Nika. The Des does a great job highlighting LASBRA and PBM and how their CC is going to be very annoying, or even Dardez as well. Hercules slots into that exact playstyle perfectly.
Wow, LASBRA gets Hydra's first. And that proc chunks down adapting just above half HP still on the Mercury. A few golden blades to start off, 2 over in the solo lane, adapting with 1 out of the jungle. We're so used to seeing big crit numbers on Mercury, I imagine. Or I hope. I'll speak my own heart here. I hope that's the direction
He's going to build crit.
we end up going, and it looks like that's where adapting will go. Yeah, I don't really know what the other option is on Mercury.
Lose?
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
If you're if you're not one-punching by the end of the game. But with that, again, maybe Myth, especially if it's a rage early on, you expect adapting to stay active and keep the gas pedal pressed against the Dragons.
Yeah, just needs those assists. Doesn't necessarily need to get active for the kills. So long as a fight is happening, adapting will likely try and hover nearby. Haven't seen a Kraken just yet from Gabe. We're going to start
the Wonder Kid.
Yeah, the Wonder Kid, the X factor for the Leviathans right now, the untested element.
The GOAT on a team of GOATs.
I wouldn't say that.
Oh, Gabe now has a chance to make something happen, but no. Would have walked into the Fear No Evil, would have had to use the beads, and not much to help out for Ronngyu, who drops. But over on the other side, it's adapting, sending a gank towards Nika, and an answer back from the Leviathan. So a fight over in mid. It's a 3-man dive onto Ronngyu. Something we've talked about with Maui. Once that swing is down, not much escapability. So a nice kind of life raft there for the Jade Dragons to get something going.
Yeah, and Ronngyu actually going for a Sunder in first slot, finishes up very quickly. He's good at stacking Prophetic Cloak, so defense will come easily. Sunder matched by PBM on the other side. Carapace Shard as opposed to Horn Shard. I expect Ronngyu to just stay active, continually looking for poke, try to burn off some of those beads, maybe even potentially line up some Krakens for Gabe. The point I was trying to make before Ronngyu fell in mid was, we're going to see Gabe's efficacy with Kraken fall pretty significantly in about 2 levels. No Aegises just yet on the side of the Jade Dragon, so even if the CC isn't connecting from Kraken, the damage will certainly be there. A couple levels that won't be nearly as true, and Aegis not exactly easy to force for the rest of the Leviathans roster. It's not individual big bursts of damage that make up their team fight. It's consistent bursts from Adapting's auto attacks or Zapman's auto attacks. So the only one that would really threaten that Aegis is Gabe. I wonder if the Jade Dragons maybe decide to even just move in towards Shelf. They decide that Zapman and Adapting are the larger of the 2 threats. Could be that they decide to forego Aegis, but I wouldn't. Gabe has a very good performance in Game 1. I think probably deserves some respect here.
I said what I said. GOAT on a team of GOATs.
Yeah, one of those guys has 3 rings.
Yeah, who's that?
fineokay got 2 golden bolts.
Give Gabe 3 years.
All right. I think this is his only set. Shinto's like on this team.
We were kind of joking, Shinto after Game 1, like, yo guys.
Like, it was pretty good. I could have done it too.
Right. I swear I could have. No, Gabe really impressed us in game number 1. Big shoes to fill though, with Shinto out for this weekend. So we'll see what Gabe can get done, especially here in this game. Now, the Des talked about it a little bit. Some of using Kraken for fights, yes. But also remember, Gabe, with Spear of Deso on the Thoth, was just sending the ults out to secure the objectives earlier in the game as well, when there was no intention of fighting for the Leviathan. So that absolutely could, maybe should be a use of the ultimate for the Leviathan's mid laner. Especially if we start to see a grouping towards this Gold Fury. Game largely even in the first 10 minutes, despite a 1-kill lead for the Leviathans. Really, that first blood making all the difference here. Prophetic Cloak for both the supports. And 1 assist at least so far for PolarBearMike. Seems like adapting to now when he's got the rage, he's felt okay, kind of sitting back, farming up a little bit further. Maybe a scrap to be had, Miff, here at the 11-12 minute mark around one of these neutral objectives.
I wonder which team would feel the onus more so. The Leviathans, superior clear, or yeah, they've got better burn and better secure. All right, let's get the Leviathans onto an objective. They've got the onus.
Yeah.
Adapting burns it. Gabe's got the secure every single time. On the other side, the Jade Dragons, if Vote's there, he's got burn, especially the Bladed Boomerang now finished up, but that's really only a facet around the Gold Fury, whereas the Leviathans can threaten both neutral objectives, already adapting, hovering around the Pyromancer. If I had to guess, though, and if the Leviathan's history is any indication, it's going to be a pick into objective, not force a fight around the objective. So where do you send adapting? He's going to be your solo agent. He's the one that's going to start off a lot of these fights, the keystone to these ganks. With the poke already ringing true from Zapman, Vote already low, might be a place to head. Otherwise, Dardez, a great target, largely immobile on this Hera, and hasn't made his way back to base just yet. Is level 12, but no second relic.
Adapting sends a gang towards Vote. So it's 2 ultimates down, and actually decent team fighting ultimates. Initiation from Zap, initiation from Adapting now gone, as well as the beads on the Ishtar and off of the Mercury. So not great for the Leviathans. Might not matter though, because Gabe, fineokay, they've pulled the Pyromancer, or maybe slowed down Nika. Kraken sends through some damage. Dardez from up and over the wall, and an excavate. Doesn't hit anyone. Looks like Gabe and fineokay will leave this fight just fine. So it could have been a costly mistake for the Leviathans, but been able to keep everyone on the map. So fineokay will step forward, maybe steal away the Pyromancer one more time, and the Leviathans get it again. It happened with Gabe in game 1, and it's happened with fineokay now in game 2. No Pyro is safe for the Jade Dragons, despite a dominating position, and all 4 members over on right pulling the Pyro.
Ronngyu in no man's land. A hero play from fineokay, tarnished a bit by the support, but buys time for this. Gold Fury on the opposite side. Vote's got to do his best fineokay impression if he wants to stop this one.
We've seen steals back and forth. Not this time, though. Vote was close. He was on time. It's actually LASBRA who's on time. Adapting blinks away.
He's so
LASBRA
fast.
Otherwise would have had the damage.
You can't even see him.
That counts as an anime reference, by the way. Zapman now in trouble. Purple buff secured, but at what cost? Will make his way around LASBRA. And it looks like Leviathan's left side of the map survives, and what's worse is now the Jade Dragons have lost their support over in mid.
Man, a crushing sequence there for the Jade Dragons. Every objective going the way of the Leviathans. Worth noting, for those of you concerned about that visual bug, those rocks on the left-hand side that Zapman just Danny Phantomed through, yeah, those don't exist. That is a UI issue we are currently working on. Don't concern yourselves. I want to talk about the steal on Pyromancer, though, and maybe not give it an opportunity with Fire Giant pulled.
Look, the Harpy wants in.
It's in.
Harpy,
Nika's
he'll never
here.
hit the fire, right? He'll never hit the fire. Nika, excavate, won't be in time. Leviathans get FG on all 5. Could get worse for Nika
got
now.
the dash.
Heal, burnt through. Zapman does the same. Leviathans get the FG, get the Hercules, and add another 1,000 or so gold to their lead.
And they're so healthy at that. Just continue pushing. 20 seconds left on Nika's respawn. You know for a fact that Vote won't be here for defense. He's just showing up on the left side. Send adapting back. He should be able to handle that on his own. Otherwise, tier 2 should just fall here with the help of the minions, unless...
Ooh, nearly a 3-man from LASBRA. It's 2 instead, but a dazzling offensive keeps fineokay alive. Ronngyu, Zap, Fino, they're down.
He got
to
the
a
pull.
3rd HP, but LASBRA's pulled back in right when you thought the Leviathans were in a bad spot. It's Ronngyu who flips it around. Vote will auto-attack down a few minions, but it's adapting over on left. Does he have the damage?
I don't think adapting wins that.
1 stack on the rage. I think adapting agrees, so he'll back away from Vote.
Well, maybe now you took over to level 15. Minion wave dealt with, but no. Vote makes his way back to base very quickly. Great play there from Ronngyu. Caught out a couple times this game, makes up for it. Shutdown kill onto LASBRA. And that bounty is significant now. Bounty changes in SMITE, a couple of kills. These kill sequences increase the value for the enemy team, and that was a big pickup. LASBRA, the only one with kills on his side, means that he is the most valuable member to shut down. The Leviathans essentially free reign of the map for a couple of minutes here. Would really like to see them take out this tier 1 tower in mid. If you're a Leviathans fan, that opens up the map significantly, makes it easier to move in towards either side neutral objectives. Just a good deal of gold to collect while you still have Fire Giant on the waist of all 5. The Leviathans don't seem too pressed about it. Instead, it's maneuvering, clearing out the jungle, just collecting farm. It is worth noting, it's an incredibly early Fire Giant. Very difficult to leverage it at this portion of the game. So instead, maybe just utilizing it to farm up a bit more easily.
This Leviathans team has impressed me. You know, I think with enough changes, especially with Gabe filling in for Shinto, one of the best in the world, would have been forgivable if this wasn't the best showing for the Leviathans. But it looks like Adapting joining the team, playing with a sub out of the mid lane. It's a team that's returned right back to their identity and its objective control, building up a gold lead, and then dominating team fights later on. Dragons have fallen into some past identities of their own, but I think still sky-high potential for this team, even if Game 2 and thus this weekend doesn't go the way the Dragons were hoping for. Poke damage out of Gabe. Poseidon continues to stack up. Brought up to Hootie, Spear the Magus. Good percent pen right around the corner. Jade Dragons, though, Myth, maybe not worried about the team fight. A Fury is up now. Fury might have something to say about it.
Yeah, the Dragons can't let this lead slip any more than it has. So presence around Oni, I think very smart. Just gotta stay in place. Ronngyu pulled back, but just too tanky already, only with the 2 items. The Jade Dragons cannot return their damage. And that was my concern in these late game team fights is, sure you got CC, but who's dealing the DPS?
Excavate gets used. Leviathans will get the Oni Fury. PolarBearMike sends down a silence. It might have slowed down some initiation from the Leviathans. Really all it takes sometimes. It's only the 1 rage stack for Adapting, but now as Deathbringer as well. Regardless, going to be dealing a lot of damage. All it takes, that 1 sonic boom, and you're worried about some of those beats.
Speaking of Deathbringer, Envenom Deathbringer gets a change. It's the item that was already getting built, the glyph, the superior of the 2 between Malicious and Envenomed. Already has the same effects it had previously. The only addition now is that it deals with HP shields. And looking at the side of the Jade Dragons, no shells, but HP shield for Dardez is essentially his best self-peel tool. If Adapting can close gap, upgrades that glyph pretty early on, could make it even more difficult for this Hera to maneuver the map, to move around in some of these late game fights. A massive target on Dardez's back. And if you deal with Dardez, that issue we were talking about just a moment ago around the Gold Fury of great CC, lack of damage, will further compound. It really is up to Dardez to secure these kills. Yep. Nika can pull whoever he wants. PBM can shadow lock him in place. But if Dardez isn't there to burst him down, then it's just Vote. And Vote's got RNG to fight against. If he's not getting his crits, I mean, he just hasn't got the damage with this build.
Yeah, you need the poly, you need the big punches. Dardez can certainly supply. Fire Giant will stand once again. That was a very early FG for the Leviathans few moments ago. It's now respawned. Very awkward spot now. We've seen games get brought back to even, but then games officially sealed around moments like this. The second Fire Giant, the Dragons realizing that the lead is already this bad with this much still available on the map. Do we have to step up to avoid all these towers going down? Maybe we'll find an opening. Over on left is Adapting. So a momentary 5v4 for the Jade Dragons with Ronngyu close by, but that means Adapting might have a route into the backline. Argus drops onto Zap, and a Kraken makes no difference. Opening pick for the Jade Dragons, who have played their advantage perfectly. Both carries gone from the Leviathans. Their support should follow. Solar Swing, where does it go? Right towards Nika. And after a bit of a delay, it'll be a 3-kill swing for the Dragons.
Adapting can't be on left. Probably can't take this fight either, but he's winning it handily. Nika, left high and dry. Should be able to work his way out. Oof, not enough.
fineokay's here as well. Fire Giant burning slowly. Jade Dragons have 5. Argus is out, so there's no ultimates. Dazzling offensive forward, but it's going to get used on Vote. Adapting continues going as well. Mike is so low. And wow, Fire Giant dropped by the Jade Dragons. The health bar's Myth simply not there. And the respect that fineokay and Adapting command around the FG was respected by the Dragons.
I saw 2 things there. One, Adapting can't be on left, and it was proven by how powerful he was in the fight. He just walks up with numbers disadvantage and absolutely decimates. Sure, there's a conversation about, well, the Jade Dragons had already used their cooldowns, ultimates were down, relics were down. Of course, Adapting's going to look good there. But that fight only happens because it is a 5 versus 4, and with the Leviathans as ahead as they were beforehand and still maintaining such a significant lead, just feels like a uncharacteristic mistake from the King to drop to the left side of the map. Allowing the Jade Dragons once more, regroup first, get onto the Pyromancer, generate some threat.
Fear no evil. It's used onto Gabe. Gabe, no chance. The risk of the Poseidon. Use the beads, didn't matter. just the one tick from LASBRA. One bit of fear. Gabe now dropped for the second time this game. Has not repeated the star-studded performance from game 1. Always going to be more difficult on something a bit less mobile. Something like the Poseidon, got to be perfect with positioning. Now it's Fire Giant up and an advantage for the Dragons, and the biggest steal threat now off the map.
Well, biggest steal threat so far has been fineokay, and he's
Yeah, I
still
guess
there.
that's true.
The Jade Dragons, I don't think they can coin toss it still. They want to force the fight first.
Can they, though? That's the question. Zapman's got some poke for PolarBearMike. Fire still, you know, it's a slow burn. It's burning, but it's slow. Adapting.
What a shot.
Gets Sonic Boom silenced out, Mike. A root around the wall as well. The Nox performing wonderfully for the Jade Dragons. Will need to do so more as Argus sends through to the back line. Where's the Sonic Boom? It might be needed. Maybe it's not, though, because fineokay is controlling it all. And a major look
whiff.
doesn't hit from adapting. Now he's left running towards the mid lane. Volt will live. Adapting will not, as Argus has a punch for adapting. And by the wayside goes to Mercury. But again, as we've seen, there's still something left in the tank, and it's fineokay.
LASBRA, no man's land. Ronngyu has got the cutoff, but can he turn it around?
Yes, he can. Fino dies. LASBRA doesn't. Ronngyu, only a hook on the PolarBearMike. Gabe back from base. Has Kraken. This is where the Dragons have to be careful.
Nika pull off the mark. Ronngyu now on the escape. But Hercules is very mobile, has a lot of movement speed. Should be able to catch up if he wants to. Instead, catch and release with 20 seconds on adapting and 30 on fineokay. All the Jade Dragons need to do is regroup and pull the Fire Giant again. Keep the Leviathans on the back foot. Force them to respond. Ronngyu hasn't been able to go back to base. He has to stick around.
But Gabe is here, and Gabe has Kraken. Can that make a difference in this fight? No landfall, no stun from Zapman. LASBRA, no fear, no evil either.
Insane
Ronngyu
flank.
steps forward, polymorph, flies out. Ronngyu is going to die. That's LASBRA on the kill. Now it's just 2 members of the Leviathans. Their carries left on this side of the map. Gabe walks forward, drops the Whirlpool, drops the Kraken, but drops no one. Jade Dragons have roared back into game 2. They've now officially taken the lead. They kill off 3 more, and they'll get Fire Giant for everyone.
Just goes to show when you're playing at the highest level, small, minute, minuscule mistakes can cost you so much. It's the Leviathan suffering now as fineokay pulled back, forced to use those beads, is able to reposition. But what good does it do you? All you can watch is this tier 2 tower fall, and the Jade Dragons might just continue this onslaught. It's 20 seconds left on the carries. Gabe and Zapman off the map. And Miniwave was there in mid, but no risk. Instead, take what is guaranteed. Another tier 2 on right, a Primal Fury on left, and the Jade Dragons have completely flipped the script of this match. And it all starts, Dave, from one misplay from adapting. Just groups up on left, takes out that tier 1. That's all the Jade Dragons needed. From there, it's been Dragons all the way down, forcing fights around the Fire Giant, de-syncing the Leviathan's 5-stack.
Could be devastating, though. LASBRA gets the ultimate out, but at the cost of his Fire Giant buff, and now at the cost of 50 seconds of a 5v4 for the Atlantis Leviathans. You consider now the Fire Giant buff is shorter, Miff. It's 3 minutes now, and so one of the 3 minutes, a third of your FG buff, now spent on the defense, where the Leviathans will be able to put pressure on your towers.
Leviathans 5-stacked in mid are certainly capable of taking out a tier 1. I wonder, though, whether or not the Jade Dragons would have legitimately moved in towards Phoenix there.
Anyway, right?
Yeah, they were already resetting. They'd already done so much. So long as they don't lose anything, I think LASBRA all right to fall.
Has been a great support battle so far. Mike has hit plenty of roots and plenty of silences on the Nox. Ronngyu, a landfall or 2 is connected, but this time just gets the beads off of Vote. Left swinging away. And now just a Pyromancer pickup. Jade Dragons will take a breather. LASBRA's back on the map. Got, what, maybe a minute or 2 left on that Fire Giant buff before it times out.
Yeah, you could use that time to try and force a fight on left. Group up around that tier 2 tower. If you can control the rotations of the Leviathans, you control where vision is established on map. So long as the Jade Dragons can generate a bit of threat here, the Leviathans won't be able to establish defensive positioning around the Fire Giant. Especially if Zap gets caught out.
Zap does not get pulled back,
Good
uses
dash.
the Aegis. Zap plays it well, despite the Dragons sending 5 towards left. Tier 2 tower, still around. Hook could connect here from Ronngyu. Landfall still halfway back from cooldown. Dazzling offensive starts it off for the Atlantis Leviathans. Fear no evil onto the back line. Gabe and Zap, they're in trouble. LASBRA has simply done too much, and that's left fineokay all alone. And it's been perfect from the Hun Bats at 7, 2, and 3. You don't get kills, but you get both carries down to half.
Man, that was picturesque from LASBRA. I thought fineokay's ultimate was the end of that team fight. Separates it perfectly, forces Dardez to back up a bit. But LASBRA says, don't worry, there's no follow-up on that dazzling offensive. I'll hit literally everybody with Fear No Evil. Knocks down the tier 2 tower on left, just as Fire Giant wears off for the Jade Dragons. Time to reset, get ready, get your relics back up, buy some wards, and group up around the Fire Giant. Leviathans, now with the most difficult Phoenix to defend gone, the most difficult wave rather, those enhanced waves down left, have to make a difficult decision. Do you want to play around your base defense, or do you want to play around the neutral objective team fight? It's not as cut and dry as Game 1 was. The Jade Dragons had come into Game 1 with a very weak base defense composition. I feel like the Leviathans, it's a bit more nuanced there. Gabe can keep the wave out pretty easily. Kraken to catch overcommit. Ronngyu, a permanent threat so long as landfall is up. The only difficulty being Mercury's job becomes much more difficult on base defense. It's not easy for him to get into that backline. He's much stronger in these jungle fights. Seems like the Leviathans have made their decision though. Push up left as much as you can, let Fire Giant go down, and then back and defend.
Not sure how much it'll really matter, but worth noting, fineokay does not have teleport. Remember that item received a bit of a nerf in 10.3. It's cooldown longer now, but Nika does have teleport and has upgraded it.
They lose this for free.
This Phoenix is gone. The reset now canceled by the Leviathans. They've stuck around looking for a left side Phoenix of their own. Are their backs being channeled by the Jade Dragons? No, they're not. They might lose the right side, but the Leviathans look like they're going to gain a left side Phoenix of their own. And Gabe unhappy with what he's seen here so far. And now a moment of conversation here, Miff, for the Atlantis Leviathans and for us as well. And truly an unfortunate pause timing, because what could be brewing now are a couple members of the Leviathans pushing Phoenix and maybe something else. We don't know quite what the call is just yet, but we're seeing macro play where the Leviathans have found an opening and are happy to trade one side of a Phoenix for another.
There are 3 Leviathans in the base of the Dragons. Minion wave is there as well, so potentially could go for a backdoor. That leaves the other 2 members of the Leviathans in positions where they have to stop these backs. That said, not easy. If you die as those 2 members, you lose your own Titan.
Right.
A very difficult position, I think. The Jade Dragons maybe even benefits more from this pause. They have time to evaluate on map.
We were able to get back in. Leviathans stick around. They're in the Titan room, but Zapman will back away. It's actually stalled out the Jade Dragons. The Dragons have now gone back. Now, I wonder if this is a call, Miff, where the Leviathans say, okay, now our fire waves can balance the left side fire waves, and we're okay to pay that price at the cost of having to deal with fire waves on right.
You've got desync timer, so eventually the Leviathans, so long as they can keep that bird alive, will have advantage on left side, as opposed to the Jade Dragons taking perhaps the least valuable Phoenix on map. That right side, so easy to defend alongside Fire Giant. So,
do you like the call?
I do love the call from the Leviathans. Being able to pull a Phoenix out of thin air like that is absolutely ridiculous, especially considering the timing of it. But if the Jade Dragons can knock down one more bird, I think it just doesn't matter. It's just whether or not they can regroup to do that. Nika, on the other side of the map, can spend his time clearing out a couple of waves here. I think the Leviathans essentially completely fizzle the Jade Dragons there. There's no way the Dragons can work their way into the base anymore.
Yeah, not much more. I think eyes have to be on LASBRA here, Miff. He's 7, 2, and 3, affected 10 of the 12 kills that the Jade Dragons have. Mike has 11 assists, so we're going to give our shouts to the Nox support, but so much of the initiation has felt like it's caught Gabe, it's caught Zapman, and it's put them down to half HP before their relics have been able to catch up and flip things back. I've seen a lot of Krakens get used defensively. I'm going to drop it at my feet, try to get this Hun Bats off of me, and that's been impactful as well. Felt like the Dragons haven't been under too much threat from the Poseidon. Maybe one more chance now while fineokay lurks in the jungle. It's a level 20, full build Amaterasu. Might have a route around the Jade Dragons. LASBRA covering that cutoff though. So it won't be a surprise and fineokay joins the rest of his team.
It's the Jade Dragons now surging forward. Mike leading the charge, connects the pull onto Ronngyu. but no follow-up there. And the longer this fight goes, the Leviathans continue to benefit. And left side Phoenix very close to respawning.
fineokay. Tossed up, landfall,
Got
that's caught Mike. Mike has only died once this game. Kraken won't make it 2. And a Fear No Evil again. It's perfectly placed from LASBRA. It's given Nika space to walk into the Leviathan side of the map. Adapting though, he's in behind the Jade Dragons here, and the respect again being paid. Near full build on Mercury. Mid Phoenix drops butt myth. Left side Phoenix still alive for the Atlantis Leviathans. Respawn just now, and the Dragon's Fire Giant buff falls off.
My eyes got a bit lost in the color explosion, but I didn't see a stun connect from that Kraken. It could have been because PBM starts to channel his own ultimate there, but had that stun connected, that's a completely different fight. The Leviathans were able to move themselves forward. LASBRA once more separates the engagement, works his way into the back line, finds a 2 or 3 man Fear No Evil, completely changes up the face of that fight. And if he continues to do so, I mean, that has got to be so frustrating for the Leviathans. Every time they find a bit of footing, just immediately crushed on their own siege. Is it a backdoor attempt, Dave? Left stacked?
Could be, although
They've been spotted.
there's a ping down from the Jade Dragons.
Maybe not spotted, but
Or maybe I wonder if this is where they are. Well, they know now. Fire Minion's going to be in the base. Actually, could be some threat on the right side. Phoenix that's about to respawn. You have 2 Fire Minion waves that might just drop your bird. If you can win the fight, it's not going to matter. And that's what the Leviathans are looking to do right now.
that's massive.
Vote drops a big ultimate onto 3 members of the Leviathans. Right side Phoenix is going to fall to the Fire Minions. So the Leviathans trying to get creative. Get an ult out of Vote, but lose their right side.
The idea from the Leviathans there is, okay, we know there are 2 in the base of the Jade Dragons. Let's run down the Fire Giant and force a 5 versus 3. CC from the Jade Dragons just too clean, connects with too many.
Fire's
the Leviathans force
Fire's
reset.
low, adapting's through, but he's gone too far. Now has to join the fight the old-fashioned way. Zapman repelling the offense. Fire Giant taken by the Leviathans, but the opening kill's there for Nika. But it's Adapting who's still alive. No, he's not. Vote has 1 more auto for it. And now it's a battle. It's a 4 versus 3 where the Jade Dragons have more footing. And fineokay will extend his life as long as he can. The duo lane for the Leviathans still alive.
4 stack of the Jade Dragons and the Titans taking a whole lot of damage here. Ronngyu can't get back to base. Can Zapman?
Zapman polymorphed. No, Zap lives. Nearly clipped by the minions. Zap may end up dropping anyway. He'll get back to the fountain. He'll be fine for now. But the Titan is down solo, and it looks like the Jade Dragons, at the end of it all, will send us to a game 3.
All off the back of one macro misplay on the left-hand side. The Jade Dragons find their first Fire Giant and maybe look a bit shaky here or there. The Leviathans ask difficult questions. How do you respond to this left side Phoenix backdoor? The response is, we'll just win every single team fight afterward. And the Jade Dragons have always been that style of team. Put pressure on and force mistakes. They do so beautifully here. But the Leviathans, I don't know, they kept me guessing throughout that one.
Look, Adapting, still got it in the tank, right? That Mercury eventually hit that point where it was causing disruption for the Jade Dragons, but you overextend, you don't get the kills, you get left alone, turned and burned. That's where the Dragons were able to make their money. I do appreciate there towards the end, obviously the Leviathans realizing the relative impact of this weekend compared to the rest of the year and what they're going to have to face. And so Zapman getting chased down and dying to minions there. Got a laugh out of fineokay. But our first game 3, Myth, we're used to waiting weeks to get a game 3. Yeah, months even. We got a game 3 for you here. The SMITE Pro League Kickoff Tournament in Season 10. Dragons, Leviathans, they go the distance. Game 3 coming up next.
Game 2 looked a lot different from the Jade Dragons. A bit of a slow start, but once the mid-game rolls through, we start to see that punch back from them. And really, from LASBRA and Nika specifically over in the jungle and solo lane is where we really start to see a lot of the pop back for the Jade Dragons in game number 2 to find their success over the Atlantis Leviathans and bring us to a game number 3. We didn't have to wait too long in order to get one of those ones. Just our second set of the day. I'm J-Mac, joined once again by Trelly on the desk to help me break this one down because, man, the Jade Dragons felt like they really were able to kind of tear the Leviathans' composition apart. Felt like the Poseidon for the Leviathans, never really able to get online, missed quite a few really big Krakens in those last couple of team fights as well.
Yeah, it seemed to me, I think Mifflin highlighted quite well, Adapting was playing a bit selfish in the early, trying to get online as you do, which is a good play style for Mercury, right? Get items and then rotate later. But it was once where Adapting stayed and left a little bit too long, grabbed the tier 1 tower. What's happening on the right side of the map? Oh, your team is losing a crucial team fight. The Fire Giant did get stalled out. fineokay sort of came in. There was a conveyor belt effect where everyone was kind of piling in trying to stop it. But ever since that play, map state-wise is in favor of the Jade Dragons. I think Nika absolutely popped off on the Hercules. Dardez was making some very crucial ultimates, doing so much damage. There was one point where Zapman ran away from Argus for a solid 30 seconds with 1 HP trying to get away from that last punch. And I think, as you said, LASBRA come in real clutch with those Fear No Evils. There was a couple times where it just completely changed the way a fight was going to go because of how much CC and how well placed that ultimate actually was for this jungler. So a night and day difference between game number 1 and game number 2 here for the Jade Dragons.
I mean, there are few times over the course of Hunbatz's competitive career as a god where you go, man, really don't like a Fear No Evil, but LASBRA in every single instance here are able to make some pretty impactful plays for his team, and really that kind of opens up the door, at least for the Leviathans, to maybe find themselves another targeted ban, try and keep LASBRA down, because really felt like these Fear No Evils are making such an impact throughout the entirety of this game. Ends up top damage for his team, does LASBRA, and actually top damage in the lobby. And brings the Jade Dragons to now a game number 3, so a tie in our second set of the day. Bumps into a big crucial moment. Remember, it's single elimination for this entire kickoff tournament. Means you only got one opportunity to kind of get through there. You don't want to miss your chance to be able to really push yourselves in and be able to be the one to help to kind of determine how the divisions break out. Remember, all of them fighting for that first seed, for that chance to really kind of at least start the train of putting some of the teams you don't want to face off against in the opposite division, because you only have to face off against them once for phase 1 of the SPL, where the teams that get put into your division, you got to play against them twice. Top seeds from each of those go into the Masters event at the end of the phase, so the rest of them have to play through. We'll see if the Jade Dragons can keep this bounce back going in game number 3 as we jump into the picks and bans, and maybe we see some more targeted bans going out through here. The Leviathans have pretty much stuck to their guns the entire way through. It's been Terra, Susano, and Aphrodite as bans there. Do you imagine maybe we see anything kind of different at top slot? Maybe leave that Aphrodite open.
No, I don't think so. I'm imagining the bans will shake out pretty much the same way. Of course, could be some change-ups from either side. I think the Hunbatz was a standout, and Adapting was popping off a fair bit, so it looks like the Mercury will get a bit of a respect ban. And then, of course, the Thoth. No way that was going to get through again. I do echo what you were saying. No way I want to see a Poseidon pick here from the Leviathans. Not even that Gabeethan wasn't playing it about as well as you can. It's just a hard pick to make work in the current meta. It's a little awkward trying to crack in that Fire Giant. It's so much bigger. You can't really place it exactly where you want to. So I'm thinking probably a smart call to stay away from that god. Maybe something with some more mobility. Maybe something that's just a little bit safer in that regard. So the Leviathans are going to stick with their first pick. They want to get Zapman on the Ishtar. I see no problem with that. It does have a fantastic team fight ultimate, and the laning phase, you're pretty much cemented if you're able to just lock in that Ishtar.
Now, I know that aside from that last game there, Ishtar has done pretty much only winning so far from the event. 3 out of the 4 games played has been a win. Do you feel that Ishtar is still kind of that god that you need to go for that top pick? Do you think there's maybe something more valuable out there? Obviously, if something like Aphrodite is left open, you maybe grab that. But do you think that Ishtar top pick is not the best thing that the Leviathans can go for early? Or do you think that it's fine for them to go for something like that as a top pick?
It's certainly fine. I don't think Ishtar is ever the best pick available anymore. She is fantastic in lane, fantastic in team fight, but you know, the Cernunnos is always there. I think as long as you have an ADC that clears and can build crit in this current meta, you're gonna be fine. It's more so just it doesn't reveal much about your draft. You can first pick it pretty consistently as long as the Yamoja, the Thoth, these sort of things that the Leviathans really want to first pick are not available, you can always go towards it, and you're not going to really review too much. So I think it's just a smart call here for the Leviathans, and they feel confident doing so. But the Jade Dragons are going to answer back with Nika's Hercules and vote Cernunnos once again. It's not easy to deal with, especially when Nika's as on point with these pushes as he has been. Pulling beads, setting up for LASBRA. That was the name of the game last time, and it worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah, a couple of double pickups and some big pushes towards the tail end of that game. Really showcased how well Nika has been able to perform on the Hercules so far in just the singular game. The Cernunnos, obviously a guy that's still sticking around from the tail end of Season 9 as well, so Vote hasn't had to reveal much of his hand on the Dragons. But one thing that was giving the Leviathans issues in game number 2 was the Hun Batz and the Nox, piloted by PBM. So now the Nox will be taken away from Mike, the Hun Batz taken away from LASBRA. So out to see how the Jade Dragons adapt to having 2 of their picks taken away from them here, at least in the first phase. The answer to that will be for Hell to go back over towards Mike. How do you feel about kind of the answer back of Nox and Hell?
I mean, that's interesting. The Nox has a good matchup into the Hercules. If you're fearing your team getting pushed, you just say, hey, stop that. You can't driving strike, you're silenced. On the flip side, Hell says, oh, you're CCing my team. Now I've cleansed you. So there is a bit of a Uno reverse card in play. If the cleanses are on point, Hun Batz ult, Nox silence, they can lose a lot of value for sure. In this case, I think Mike probably takes it once again. I would imagine the Hell is still going over to support. Dardez had a fine performance on the Hera, and it is going to be banned away, so it looks like the Leviathans are also thinking that's probably going to be the call. It may just be to counter out the Nox. I mean, that could be the only reason. But when you have big CC abilities that you're relying on to win a team fight through, and they just get cleansed, it can really stop a bit of what you're trying to accomplish in a 5v5 team fight sense.
Now we have Odin Vamana banned away once more by the Jade Dragons. Not going to let the Odin go through one more time like it did in game 1 for fineokay and the Leviathans. It's really a crucial part, at least of the core that the Leviathans had in that first game's success. Opposite end, Hera and a Wheelish actually going to be banned away. A little bit of synergy with the Hercules, at least in that regard, so maybe seeing that as potential ban away, keep that one out of LASBRA's hands. Speaking of LASBRA, still need to find his pick for the Jade Dragons in the back half of the draft. And not going to let Dardez as well be able to pick up that Hera that he performed so well on there in game number 2. So where do the Dragons go then? A lot of options available to the mid lane. Maybe we just go back to the Athena. That's something that LASBRA was running at the World Championships. Nobody was really playing Athena. Out of nowhere, LASBRA picks it up for the jungle. Able to at least get the bolts through the quarterfinals to this kind of pick. How do you feel about the Fenrir for Laz?
I do like the possible Fenrir lock-in for adapting if they are going to go to it, but it looks like we're going to hold that thought. A lot of CC again for the Jade Dragons. I mean, you take away the Hun Batz, the Athena jungle is still a possibility, as you highlighted, a pick that LASBRA really does like to go to. I've seen him run it in ranked plenty of times, even, as of recent. So still something that he's got in the back pocket close by. It's just, do you have enough damage, right? Because Athena, she can have a lot of damage if we're able to land that ultimate consistently, but it is a lot of setup. You're pretty much relying on Polynomicon procs and follow-up from your team. So far, they've got pretty good damage. I think as long as you're playing around Vote, should be just fine. It is going to be the Cerberus there for the Leviathans, trying to deal with some of that anti-heal. Has a good matchup. Remember, Cerberus did get some changes as well with all this healing, so might be a little bit more potent in a matchup like this against the Hell. And again, anything that's going to benefit off of getting beads down from the Nox, from the Hun Batz, from the Cerberus, heck, even the Ishtar, I'm thinking it's going to slot in pretty well here to the Leviathans draft.
Yeah, just a quick, fast recap on some of the changes towards Cerberus. More healing reduction and more healing steal from his passive, increased stun on his first ability. Just a little bit of extra healing, or a little bit of extra damage kind of coming through, at least with that ultimate. Actually, just mostly healing removed off of there, but the increased healing, the increased anti-heal and steal, as you mentioned, very potent up against a god like Hell. And even some of just the inherent healing that comes from gods like, as well, Hercules and the lifesteal from Cernunnos. How do you feel about the double hunter composition? We have the Muzen comp, something that Dardez specifically was playing a lot of when he was on that Oni Warriors composition. He would run that one with Cuvo Fred, usually running things like the Dodgy kind of come to mind up to there. So how do you feel about the double hunters for the Dragons this time around?
I mean, if you're able to facilitate the double hunter composition, it's disgusting, right? If you can stand in front of them and just set up, hit as much CC as possible, protect your hunters, then yeah, AMC and Cernunnos are going to shred throughout the entirety of the game. But that's never really the question. Can you facilitate them? Is can you keep them alive? And in this case, Hun, Batz, Nox, and Cerberus are going to be trying to get to these hunters. They don't have CC immune ults, the Cern and the AMC, they don't. So holding onto those beads is going to be very key. It's going to be all on Mike. I mean, is he going to be cleansing every single one of these abilities? It's possible, but you got to make sure, number one, you're always in light stance, and number two, you never waste it. You can't be saying, hey, I'm going to use the cleanse just because. No, I need it to make sure it's on Fear No Evil, or if you get stingy and tormented, or if you get hit by this Nox grab, it's going to be difficult.
Now, we did see at least kind of one of the newer items come out for PBM on the Hell in game number 1. It was the new healing item. Gives you a little bit of a boost when you heal lower HP targets. You get a little bit more power into the build. Didn't seem to bring too much success for Mike that time around, so you imagine maybe we see a little bit more of a tanky style build coming from him in game number 3.
I don't think so. It's
no?
Mike. I'm not saying it wouldn't be good. It certainly could be better, but I think Mike likes to do a little bit of damage on his mage supports. He wants to be a threat. He wants to help his team, but also he wants to have fun. So I'm thinking probably more of a hybrid build, that prophetic cloak, into some damage, some cooldown, and then prioritizing the light stance.
Well, our first game 3 of the day, it's between the Atlantis Leviathans and the Jade Dragons. One goes home, one moves on throughout our tournament. Let's see who's going to come out on top for game number 3.
First game 3 of Season 10 of the SMITE Pro League. And it's the Dragons and the Leviathans. What a game 3 matchup we've got, especially in the first round of the SMITE Pro League kickoff tournament. Remember, we're playing all weekend long to find our first seed. First seed will then pick a team to go over to our second group, our second division, and then we'll bounce back and forth from there until we get 4 teams in both sides, and that'll set the stage for Phase 1 and our road to Masters. So, Miff, one more game. One of these 2 teams moves on. The other one goes home. Tomorrow will be 2 best-of-5s. Till then, we're hanging on best-of-3s here today. I kind of joked with some of the pros out in the lobby just now. We're doing this now. We're in Nox, Hell, Mage support meta, it feels like, and at least for this weekend, I'm not sure that changes.
Yeah, Aphrodite's getting perma-banned. Healer's in a very good spot right now. And I imagine that continues to be the case for at least a little while until some strong counters are figured out. You know, I had thought Cerberus would be one of the priority picks with healers kind of being the talk of the town right now, but for the most part, I'm not so certain that the changes that he got really will significantly dampen even PBM. Sure, you're sealing a little bit more healing, but I don't think Hell is really the healer anymore. Like, she's got it great out of combat, and I think that's the largest change to healers across the board is that their out of combat healing is just much better. But with no power scaling on heals, and it's only just from scaling your ability, it's not as if it's the massive burst heal that it once was, that 400 or 500, now closer to about, I believe, 180 at max rank. So, as far as in combat is concerned, sure, fineokay, going to benefit a little bit more so from healing reduction, but as far as PBM's concerned, he could just hover in light stance, keep your power down, and back up to heal his team a little bit later on.
Yeah, it looked fine for Mike and Vote despite a loss. The laning phase at least looked good on this Hell earlier in the set in game 1 for the Jade Dragons. And I loved what I saw from LASBRA on the Hunbats in game 2. Felt very impactful. Was constantly finding initiation on the Gabe and on the Zapman, and a big contributing factor to the Jade Dragons in their win. I think Athena can do that as well, Miff, but it's going to be a totally different vibe, where you're hoping those ultimates can rotate around the map, but I think full damage Athena has the ability to deal some actual decent damage.
It's a difference of power curve and when you become powerful. LASBRA on Athena, 3 items, then we can start fighting. If it's Polynomicon first slot, you got a little bit of presence, but really need to stack up that power beforehand. So for the most part, I think LASBRA likely just farming on map, waiting till level 5, and then using Defender of Olympus reactively to wherever Adapting is playing. It's play spoiler to Adapting's game until LASBRA comes online, utilizing that damage mitigation, that defense, to prevent maybe a Fear No Evil from securing some of these kills. So if we're talking about proactive element on both sides, the Leviathans can rally behind their Hun bots. The second he takes over to level 5, it's just a great team fight tool, and beforehand he's just an assassin in Season 10.
Maybe even at level 3, Adapting, following up on Nika, already using the dash. Won't be enough damage. As the stun from fineokay
Yikes!
isn't there, Fino's got to be careful. The dash was still down. One tower shot could have been a costly push from Nika. Some of the minions were dealing damage there to the Hercules. And you kind of ribbed me a bit going into game 2, talking about Dardez and how he's still playing the same stuff. And that would have been a more simple way of saying what I actually said.
Sure.
But I'm going to say the same thing about LASBRA here. That this Athena style of jungle, Athena jungle style of play, is something LASBRA was doing last year as a member of the Bolts. And so it's sort of an interesting dynamic and maybe expected early on in the year where the Dragons and their individual members are sticking with their play style and their god picks from their teams of the past year while trying to make it work in a more synergistic way as this new team of 5. And I think obviously has some value after a win there in game number 2. I think we've seen some good things from the Leviathans, though, as well, Miff. I think you're happy with how Adapting has showed up in the first couple of games on his journey back into the SPL. And I think one of the strong points has been that Ronngyu and Zapman, well, they're one of the best dual lanes in the world. And looks like they're going to continue to be so here in Season 10.
That said, Ronngyu has a couple uncharacteristic blunders in game 2, gets caught out a few times throughout the early. Nox certainly susceptible to that exact same thing. With the displacement of the Jade Dragons or the ability to just cripple the dash thanks to Dardez's stinger, might make it difficult for Ronngyu to find where he wants to stand in a couple of these fights. Otherwise, the Jade Dragons, I think, happy with the pace so far. And it's something you wouldn't normally say about the Jade Dragons. 0 kills, they're happy with the pace, but...
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to learn a new pace of the Jade Dragons this year. You know, it's a totally different looking squad. It's really only Mike from that team. I mean, you wonder if this team plays more akin to how the Only Warriors were playing last year?
Yes.
Okay.
There's three-fifths of them.
Yeah, but is Mike or LASBRA could be a commanding enough player or initiator to change up that style a little bit. But I think you're right. At least from what we've seen, it is similar to how that Only Warriors team played. But we got a whole year to figure all this out. For now, it's just seeing how we can do on a couple months of practice in the kickoff tournament. Joking about Dardez and sticking with the same picks he has. I mean, he's gone to AMC here in game 3. Something we haven't seen many people go towards. Immobile, but capable of high damage numbers.
And I'm glad to see this build from Dardez. We had seen the double hunter build from Baskin earlier. It was, I believe, Devourer's Gauntlet, immediately into Bloodforge, double lifesteal stack, and then he had a cowl for triple lifesteal a little bit later on. That's one answer to the lifesteal reduction across the board that we had seen in 10-3, but I think leaning into the strengths of maybe the ability damage of this AMC, diversifying your damage output, Vote can be the auto attacker, Dardez will still have the burst, I think significant for the Jade Dragons. So Transcendence in first slot with Bluestone indicates to me that Dardez is going to build what Dardez has been building, which is just ability all the way through.
How long do you think it takes, like, seeing LASBRA on his player cam with a Jade Dragons jersey on? You know how, like, when it's the new year and it takes you forever to get used to writing the new year on your documents and stuff, how long is it going to take you to get used to seeing LASBRA in a Dragons jersey?
Well, we haven't seen the jersey yet, have we?
All right, sure.
It's a t-shirt,
with
but
on the Dragons, I guess.
It'll take me a bit, I think. I mean, I so closely associated LASBRA with the identity of the Olympus Bolts. It was, is LASBRA doing well? The Bolts are doing well. Right. Now it's probably the same, but with the Jade Dragons. I don't know. Not too long. Give me a week.
I was going to say a month. I think it's going to take a month for me to... Maybe, although, I don't know. I'm getting real nitpicky here because, you know, the SPL will be another couple weeks after this, and so...
We got, like, the SEC stuff coming up.
SEC stuff. So maybe a couple weeks of actual SPL play, but maybe a month of real time. I'll get used to it at that point. But I think the Dragons will be happy with their jungler. Game 2 performance specifically. A bit more difficult than game number 1.
I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
How long is it going to take you to get used to seeing Shinto on the Leviathans? You know, we've just got so much experience now with Gabe here.
With Gabe, it's our only look, really.
Yeah.
You know?
3 games already, about 2 hours combined playtime, nearly.
I feel like I've been able to start rattling off Gabe like it's second nature. You know what I mean? I don't even have to think about it anymore.
It is weird how quickly he fit in, isn't it? Like, I'm not batting an eye seeing Gabe here.
And I'm glad that it's an easy enough name. You know, I think it would have been more difficult if it was something crazy and convoluted, but Gabeethan is about as easy as it gets for us, so I appreciate him for that. And has fit in. At least in game 1, looked great. Poseidon, a bit more difficult to make work there in game 2. First gank of the game, sent towards Zap at level 8. LASBRA avoids the stun, so does Vote. And Vote will take first blood and take a Bloodforged shield on the other side as well. Well-timed gank from the Jade Dragons jungler will net the first kill.
Yeah, Zapman just walks into the jungle there, into the waiting trap of LASBRA. Easy turnaround. Ishtar, not exactly known for her escapability. That dash so easy to block out. Makes it very difficult to position in narrow jungle corridors when surrounded by the enemy. So the Jade Dragons strike first. First blood does find its way to Vote.
Oh man, Stinger onto Ronngyu this time. LASBRA will dash forward. There's your taunt. There's your lockdown and a kill. Over to PBM. That's something we've talked about with Athena so much over the years, especially in Athena support. We've seen Sod play Athena solo at some point last year. We saw a bit of that. Where it's just dash taunt is so strong, one of the strongest combos in the game. When you can make it work like this, it's simple and keeps clean communication lines for the Dragons open.
It's just so invaluable how much it streamlines your team fight. Right. So often it's, when do I use my Kraken? What's our CC look like? How do we start the fight? LASBRA said, I'll just dash, and then I'm going to taunt. And there better be damage behind it. And
that's right.
For the most part, there will be, especially single target damage. If it's just a taunt with Dardez nearby, Stinger's going to lock them down, and you've got that defense shred if both ADCs are there. So difficult for anybody on the Leviathans to survive that one, regardless of how much defense you really do stack up in that build. Point of correction, it's not Polynomicon in first slot for LASBRA. Instead, book a Thoth, which makes a fair deal more sense. Stack up that damage, get your penetration, then look towards the Polynomicon a little bit later on. I am curious, though, whether or not he elects to go down the full damage tree or whether or not he decides maybe a bit of utility valuable for him going forward. In second slot, the answer's already there, and it's more damage. I wonder, maybe Spear of Desolation, that cooldown reduction is so important. Getting 2 confounds off in a team fight might just separate a team fight win from a loss.
Especially if we haven't seen it yet, but could see. Wow, well-timed on the taunt there from Laz. Delays out some of the CC immunity, but forces the ult away from fineokay. Vote and Mike will send the Fury back and forth. Zapman catches out the dash. Would have been a bit more threatening had Adapting or Gabe or even Ronngyu been there, but Zapman's been a bit left on an island here on the Ishtar.
Haven't talked about it just yet, but Gold Fury got a buff in 10-3. Enhanced movement speed. You can't do that ring around the rosy anymore. Now you got to actually bounce it back and forth, which is what we saw PBM and Vote attempting there until Zapman had spotted it out. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for early objectives on the left-hand side. You're going to need more than just 2 people there. Or 2 range targets if you get enough time. Could do it pretty easily. Otherwise, just a little bit of presence from Zapman, able to stop that one in its tracks.
It is still a good start for the Jade Dragons. Be about 1,000 gold in the lead of the Atlantis Leviathans, what you expect after just a couple of kills. LASBRA's been hanging out on left for a little while here. Haven't seen Defender of Olympus. Large global utility there for LASBRA. Haven't seen that get used just yet.
Haven't seen Adapting at all.
Yeah, haven't seen Adapting, not on the Hunbats. Haven't seen... Do we see a Fear No Evil used maybe to defend the shield buff? I might be thinking back to game 2, but you're right.
Yeah,
but this is what we were talking about with Adapting, and especially on the Mercury. He was very active early in that Mercury game. But this is more of a pace of game where we're used to seeing, where you'll slow down, you'll farm up, and then mid-game is really when that hyper carry style kicks in.
Yeah, once you have 100 to 0 potential on your own, I think that's when Adapting likes to get involved. He's taken a very slow build, Transcendence in first slot, 5 stacks out from that one being finished up, likely Jotuns. Next up, just get all that CDR available and utilize that Fear No Evil on cooldown. So long as that diamond is filled up, I think Adapting may be missing some opportunities to burn away these beads or force out any of these other defensive relics. The Jade Dragons, though, I thought maybe considering pulling out the Pyromancer there. They had vision on left side, realized Zapman had gone back to base, and with a Sentry Ward on it, could have potentially thought about taking it for themselves, but Athena's burn on objective, laughable. I mean, it's just a non-factor. LASBRA would have been chiseling away at that for a good long while, so instead, just farm up on map. Speaking of, though, take a peek at Baba Yaga's build. It's standard in that Spear of Desolation, Divine Ruins, essentially what Gabe has gone for every single game so far.
Yep.
But Baba Yaga is the god of stacks.
Yeah.
You can get
no
a
stacks.
Warlocks, maybe a Book of Thoth. You can get it very quickly. Instead, just standard items. Almost indicates to me that Gabe thought there would be a bit more action in this game, but with adapting going stacking, you'd think there'd be a bit more conversation about when you need to get powerful, when those power spikes need to happen. Gabe's there, adapting, still working on his.
Also there are a couple of items rather in the mage tree that are still strong, but you're right, we're so used to seeing a couple of stacking items early in the Baba Yaga build.
Well, it wasn't Jotun's for adapting either. Brawler's Beat Stick, some anti-heal stacked up.
And a Contagion, and a Divine Ruin.
Yeah,
and
good luck.
And a Cursed Ankh for Ronngyu right off the bat. Worried about Mike, worried about some lifesteal stance from Vote.
Nika as well.
Nika, some burst healing in that kit. Maybe a non-factor later on as this game goes on. Things slowing down a bit here, Myth. 13 or so minute mark. The Jade Dragons made their mark early in this game, but have been okay to rest on the laurels a bit. It was LASBRA really spearheading that approach. It was the dual lane of the Leviathans that fell prey a couple of times, but maybe okay to just let off the gas and feel okay with how their team fight looks in the next 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, the Dragons don't necessarily need to force anything just yet. Could potentially pull out the Pyromancer here, and I believe they will do so. Burning quickly, but the Leviathans are nearby.
They are here. Are they, though? Are they really close by? We'll find out. The thrilling conclusion of the first Pyromancer pull of the game, just around the corner. And the desk was actually talking about this a bit here in just a... What am I trying to say? The desk was talking about this.
They were talking about this.
A
and
few
this is
moments ago. Do you know what it is?
No.
They're talking about what Mike would try to do with his build, whether he was going to stick with something a bit more damaging in that second item slot, if he was going to go more tanky. Well, Mike's gone Chronos Pendant, second overall on the Hell here. Rotating through those abilities. Remember, CDR also felt like it was a bit more prevalent in some of the itemization in 10.3. As we talked about Desolation a lot, and Chronos Pendant can certainly provide some of that. And so Mike wants to maybe be a bit more active on this Hell. The Pyromancer pulled now by the Jade Dragons, and like I said, we'll get back in and see exactly how that finishes up here in just a few moments. But it's a team, clearly, Myth, that with just 1,000 or so gold in the lead are feeling confident with where their abilities stand. Get the Pyro down to half. Gabe close by, so is fineokay. A taunt through from Laz. The Pyro is reset. One more taunt is in. But adapting, looking for Laz, won't get him. And Athena has lived, but it's going to be a pull from fineokay. And how about the damage from the rest of the Jade Dragons? The Leviathans found great counter initiation, but it simply didn't matter. Too much burn. And the Dragons get Pyro +1.
Yeah, Vote makes the rotation and Zapman does not, so that was a fight fated for the Jade Dragons, the Leviathans in a 4v5 and a deficit. Unlikely to walk out with a win there. Nearly able to shut down LASBRA, who gets very aggressive. The dash in into taunt, I thought, sealed his death, but adapting not quite powerful enough to do the damage on his own, and Gabe in the grayscale cannot help. So the Jade Dragons not only take the objective, but also the life of the mid laner and potentially the Gold Fury as well. A massive swing for the Chaos side.
Starting to run away with it a bit.
It's one mistake. It's one mistake again. Just Zapman not ready to rotate, and the rest of the Leviathans decide that they think they can fight in a 4v5 and caught with their pants down a bit.
I was wondering if it was going to be the global pressure of LASBRA and that instant rotation that was going to cause issues, and it's kind of the opposite. Laz was just there, and so was Vote.
Haven't seen a Defender of Olympus yet.
Haven't had to, right? I mean,
he's in the right spot already.
He's just walking forward. Maybe later in the game, you see some wave clear, things like that. If we even get there as LASBRA, we're talking about defending fire minions, something like that, and haven't had to worry about it. First Fear No Evil of the game we saw from adapting, but didn't worry the Jade Dragons all that heavily. Though, maybe if you're looking at your beads timers, they are all nearly perfectly in sync between Nika, LASBRA, Dardez, Vote. PolarBearMike's just a few seconds behind that, so it might have been Fear No Evil that caused all of that, or Stygian Torment overlaid, but the power of beads certainly standing strong here for the Jade Dragons. This is where the game really can break wide open, though. You get Pyro, 4,000 or 5,000 gold in the lead, nothing really on the map to fight over, but it's an opportunity for the Dragons to force the issue around the towers, maybe around Zapman. Vote close by.
Can't move.
And Zapman will survive but excavate. Hello, says Nika, and goodbye in one fell swoop. Zap used the Aegis, didn't matter at the end, and now a tier 2 tower under threat.
Yeah, nobody on the defense. Leviathans tried to shut down LASBRA on the opposite side. Come up empty-handed. So tier 2 will fall alongside Zapman. The Leviathans need to find something here. A tier 1 on right, I suppose, soothes the loss ever so slightly. A tier 1 at mid would have gone a long way as well, but with LASBRA already back there, nothing you could do about it. The Jade Dragons just playing really well. We talked about it during P's and B's. Maybe not the best 5-on-5 engagement. You probably favor the Leviathans in a 5-on-5 team fight. Haven't seen one just yet. It's been constant picks, playing off of the confound from LASBRA, catching people alone on the map or in 3v2s or 4v2s. And the Jade Dragons, they continue to pose difficult questions. How do you respond to the fire?
A 17-minute fire at that. Pyromancer maybe about a minute away from respawning. Might see a defender of Olympus here. LASBRA's over on left, could continue to force that issue, but you're not going to siege a Phoenix just yet. You do have Poly, so that could help. But this is where that global pressure can really matter. Somebody from the Leviathan's going to have to go defend. fineokay has teleport this game. Could be a difference maker. Nika pulls in, but does not get the push back onto the Cerberus. Still LASBRA just making a wasteland of the left side of the jungle, and the Dragons happy to take this 4v3 under the tier 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a 4v3 if Defender of Olympus is up, right?
That's right.
It's a 5v whoever shows up to defend. LASBRA always has the option to get involved on that side of the map. So similar to how we would see Cyclone spin last year, always run that Chernobog on the opposite side and then get involved when needed. Athena can do the exact same thing. Weakness being, though, even with a lead, I'm not so certain that LASBRA wins the 1v1 up against Adapting. Certainly not the 2v1 with Gabe here. So a disengage, while the rest of his team just continue to lay waste to the right-hand side. Jade Dragons take the Pyro and potentially some more.
Fire Giant is started now. Maybe need the Defender of Olympus from LASBRA, but there if needed. Fire Giant, oh man, it's quickly burning. At 18.5 minutes, Ronngyu, fineokay, they're close. Zapman might have just stolen the FG. I don't know who it was, but it's the Leviathans for sure. The Jade Dragons now on the chase. Right from under their nose goes the Fire Giant. But remember, they've still got a lead. They've got an opportunity, the Dragons do, to win this fight. fineokay's low as well, though. LASBRA has found 4 with a taunt. But the Leviathans are able to disengage. Nika's still in it, Defender of Olympus. That'll reposition LASBRA, who's got a taunt right around the corner. The Leviathans steal Fire Giant. They lose fineokay, but maybe pause the game.
A miracle fire steal there. Should delay this game ever so slightly, but the Jade Dragons resustaining thanks to the Hell, and relatively healthy regardless. They're able to knock down this tier 2 tower. Zapman has just shown himself on the right-hand side on ward. So the Jade Dragons take that info, maybe send LASBRA over to catch off Zap on rotation in, while the rest of them back up to the Primal Fury. Even with Fire Giant going to the Leviathans, I think all they've done is stem the bleeding for a moment, prevent it from getting worse, but I'm not certain they can fight in to the Jade Dragons, even with Fire on 4 still. There's no way you're walking into a healthy tier 1. You might be able to knock down this tier 1 at mid.
Leviathans, this is the life raft that they needed here in Game 3 to avoid a first-round exit from the SMITE Pro League Kickoff tournament. They fought back in. Remember, they're playing with a substitute mid laner for this set. Gabe looked great in Game 1. The Poseidon, neither here nor there. Baba Yaga off to an 0-1 start, but up against a very difficult team in the Jade Dragons, held his own. About as well as you could hope for. That second win in that previous fight was scary. Look at a comeback mechanic where you're going to get, was it maximum of 500 gold from those chests when you're 5,000 gold behind. I think it's 100 gold for every 1,000 you're behind, up to a maximum of 500.
Unevenly split, lowest gold on your team gets the majority. I'm not doing the math
Usually
for you.
your support, right?
It's gotta be.
And so it's helpful, right? It's a little something. It's especially with Fire Giant, it actually feels okay. It's just an extra few hundred gold here or there, depending on what items need to be finished up. But that has not slowed down the Dragons. They're still looking at tier 1 on right. have plenty of siege potential. And maybe as expected, Myth. Fire Giant stolen by the Leviathans, but still slow played. And no issue forced by the team that's behind.
And nothing they can do. Maybe now could catch out, though. PBM left alone. It's just Nika nearby if this fight were to start off. Instead, maybe PBM trying to bait forward the Leviathans. Catch them on a rotation in. Fire Giant buff will wear off in the next couple of seconds. Maybe around the time Pyromancer spawns up. So the Jade Dragons, I think, very willing to step up once more and force the fight. Gold lead, I believe, doesn't even shift with the Leviathans taking Fire Giant. Maybe even continues to go in favor of the Jade Dragons. But the Leviathans show that they are capable of fighting in neutral territory. And I think that's massive not only for their mental, but for this next engagement. The ability to show up to fire and prevent that burn, significant. Keep your eyes on Gabe. He's one of the major players here for the Leviathans in a Fire Giant team fight, as well as fineokay. We've seen a couple of these Stygian Torments connect with a lot of targets, but it's similar to playing against a Geth when you've got CC. You need to hit the support every single time, because that cleanse could just absolutely decimate fineokay's ultimate. If you can connect with Mike, you're at least forcing some beads.
And the beads all upgraded for the Jade Dragons, at least to the lower cooldown rate, not fully upgraded.
How do you get out of that?
LASBRA dashes away. Defender of Olympus will not get LASBRA out, so it's a clean pick for the Leviathans. And what's the call now? It's unfortunate timing for Laz. 45 seconds on his death timer, and 0 seconds on the Fire Giant timer. And it's well timed and maybe perfectly timed for the Leviathans to kill off the Dragon's jungle.
But it does cost them Fear No Evil, so a massive teamfight tool lost. Pyromancer pulled and taken by the Jade Dragons. Fight should fizzle from here. Remember, LASBRA might be dead for 20, but he won't have to travel to the team fight. Defender of Olympus still up. Won't have the beads on landing. The Jade Dragons playing with confidence.
Well, that's actually the call. Dragons are going to have their jungler here in 15. Nika has teleport, but he's already here. The Leviathan's happy with the pull, and I think would have been happy getting Pyro at least with that pick. Doesn't result in that. Another steal. We have seen a few steals so far here today, Myth. Not only in Game 1, but we've extended over into Game 2 and Game 3. I think if was it Zap maybe we're thinking stole that previous Fire Giant. So finally an FG steal. I don't know if that was on your bingo card. We're almost done with bingo after 2 games on day 1. As SMITE has certainly started to deliver here in Season 10. It's Nika playing Separator. This Hercules has been an issue. 2-0-1. Creating plenty of space for Nika's longtime teammates, Dardez and Vote. This double AE carry composition, something we saw the Styx Ferryman theory craft a bit with earlier on. If Hunter items are strong and we're thinking Hunters are in a good spot, these types of comps may make a bit more sense in 10.3.
I'm trying to figure out what the answer to Nika is for the Leviathans. Normally it's Shadow Lock. He's not as tanky as we think he is. Just burn him down, but has Spirit Robe for the DR, is already upgraded. His starter has Defender of Olympus if he's really in trouble. Cleanse from Mike on low cooldown, thanks to Prophetic Cloak as well as Chronos Pendant, means it's going to be really difficult to lock him down. So maybe the answer to Nika is ignore him and instead look towards that back line. Good luck closing gap. He's been creating the space his team needs, but if you can get on to Dardez in particular, I mean, he does not have great answers to the dive of the Leviathans. Fear No Evil will likely force both Beads and Aegis simultaneously. Leave the rest up to maybe fineokay or have Gabe throw some damage from range with a home sweet home.
Do you think that's where? Do you think Mike just hovers near Dardez in a lot of these fights?
We don't want to be right on top of him.
Right.
You got to play at a distance so you're not also clipped by the CC, but play around him for sure. I think Mike probably plays around the middle. If there's a front line, a back line, he wants to be in that middle ground where he can join wherever that dive starts to develop for the Leviathans.
That is stressful.
It's hard. It's one of the most difficult positions to be put in.
I need to be told exactly who I should be standing near, and that's where my brain cuts off. But Mike, so talented, plenty of years of success for PBM.
That right there, that's got to be the most annoying interaction.
Right.
We locked down Nika, we got some poke.
Oh,
Mike was nearby.
Mike's
unlucky.
Close. Yep. Has Chronos Pendant. Bubble with it as well. That's what Ronngyu skips the Chronos Pendant, picks up the bubble. Spectral armor for both Fino and Ronngyu, and so some of those crits, really namely from Vote, only from Vote, going to be shrugged off a bit easier.
That bubble makes it even harder to lock him down. Now Mike can legitimately just stand on top of Vote, stand on top of Dardez, and if Fear No Evil's there, bubble procs, use the cleanse anyway.
Yep.
Same with the silence from Nox. I mean, you've got great ways to proc it from a range, but just adds layers of entropy to how the Leviathans need to approach this team fight.
We know what we say about Murphy's Law, right? In a state of entropy, anything that can happen will happen, you know?
I thought Murphy's Law was what can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah, something like that. My favorite though,
okay.
My favorite though is Cole's Law. Have you heard that one?
No, let's hear it.
It's a thinly sliced cabbage. Yeah, baby. We're in mid-season form.
way.
We're in mid-season form on day 1.
That is insane. I can't believe you've done this.
I love it here. What a great place to be.
That's your favorite caster? He made a
Yeah.
coleslaw joke.
I hate coleslaw. It's terrible. The Jade Dragons, they'll pull and secure Pyromancer. 3 bombs for the Dragons. So even if you're not using them around the FG, you're going to have a much easier time breaking open the base of the Leviathans. 3 minutes away from Enhance, we might not get there. fineokay is going to lead forward. Fire Giant taken by the Dragons this time, adapting him. LASBRA go toe-to-toe, but LASBRA's won that fight. Ronngyu now trying to get out. Nika could dash forward, has range for a pull. Eyes all on the Hercules here, slowed down by Ronngyu a bit. The Dragons will take 4 FG buffs to mid.
Man, Nika just herd dogged everybody on the Leviathan. Say, back up, get out of the way of my team.
He
Create
ramsied
space
him.
for that mid Phoenix, which goes down expeditiously. The Jade Dragons, they've taken fire, and they've taken the bird, already breaking the base of the Leviathan, so they're going to take their win and walk themselves out of there. That comeback mechanic that everybody's been talking about, yeah, good luck. Wait for the respawn. It's gone now. The Jade Dragons have taken that as well.
They don't get it though, worth mentioning.
Yeah, they don't get that gold. It goes to nobody.
That's right.
That's so selfish.
Off into the nether, right? Nobody gets it. Man, the Dragons have really showed up. And this is the style of game we expect the Leviathans, at least Leviathans of old, we're still trying to learn their identity this year. But the 5-1 games where you find yourself 10,000 gold ahead, that's like peak Leviathans, you know what I mean? And the way that they've played in the past. Jade Dragons had and have the ability to play that. But remember, this is a new look Dragons team as well. It's really Mike is all that's left from the Dragons roster of last year. So maybe this is what we should expect a bit more of as the year goes on, dominating around what their composition does well. Now Nika's reached full build. Dardez almost there. Votes at full build. The Leviathans handedly behind, almost a full item for everyone. It's going to be difficult to defend against this. No more bombs, though. No more Pyromancer bombs, at least. I'm not sure that'll matter much in the grand scheme.
No, burst potential at a high pitch here for the Jade Dragons. LASBRA, Polynomicon, now Bumba's Hammer as well. It means Confound into auto attack, which is a guaranteed auto attack, will absolutely decimate whoever he connects with. The Leviathans have got good base defense, though. 2 large AoE CC abilities between Stygian and Torment and Fear No Evil. They can desync those, generate some threat for the Jade Dragons. Beads, Gabe hasn't had exactly a loud performance here in Game 3, but nearly full build has got the damage to keep the Jade Dragons at bay. And even Zapman to a certain extent. Those snipe auto attacks from Ishtar, very difficult to weave through. If you can connect with LASBRA, prevent that blink from going through, makes it a little bit more difficult for the Jade Dragons to initiate the fight.
Gabe, been quiet this game on the Baba Yaga. Caught up plenty with the build, though. I mean, that'll chunk down. Vote. Yep, down to half HP is where he's got to be careful. Fire bolts can rain through now from Baba. Dragons taking a mountain of damage, but what has Nika done? And LASBRA, everything is the answer. Dardez cleans up the kill, but while the back line of the Dragons has to leave, the front line, the initiators, can stand strong. The Phoenix will fall, and the Dragons retain all 5, and it looks like they'll get 2 plus a bird.
But the Dragons are weak here, Dave. I don't think they can continue to walk forward. PBM, a little bit more interested in dealing damage than he is healing the rest of his team. Should be able to resustain, though. And with only 1 more tower standing and 20 seconds on nearest respawn, maybe potential to walk in. That sustain starting to stack up a bit. All that CDR from Mike adding up, but has taken too long, I think. The Jade Dragons seem to agree, and instead steal the jungle, regroup, potentially take out a tier 2 tower. I would love to see them go there. They've got eyes for fire and pyro.
Fire Giant is falling off. Last couple of minutes for the Leviathans have to feel like a blur. I mean, it's a fire giant. It's an immediate rundown. I don't think the Leviathans really figured out how they wanted to play their composition this game. The Jade Dragons did. A lot of it spearheaded through LASBRA. And as Athena really got things going early and has continued to do so. And think about what you talked about earlier with Nika hurting the Leviathans almost. And LASBRA, whether it's Defender Olympus or just on 2 feet, has followed up Nika and found taunts consistently, and it's been terribly difficult for the Leviathans to get away from a lot of that.
This is dangerous.
Leviathans will step forward here, but Dragons, as we've seen a few times, have the ability to answer.
Already minions in the base of the Leviathans, so the Jade Dragons absolutely know that the Leviathans are hovering in the jungle. Even if they haven't got vision directly on them, the only answer to leaving your Titan available is they must be somewhere else. fineokay, forced back to base. Deal with this wave. Has teleport, you're right. But still an opportunity for the Jade Dragons to go ahead and pull the fire giant, and they'll take it.
They will. Ronngyu here, though. Has bubble. Teleport. Gonna roll through from fineokay. LASBRA walking down mid. Could be important. Now we're finally at split push territory, right? Laz can make life so difficult for this Phoenix. Let's see what this poly proc does. Take some chunk down. The Phoenix lives, but the minions might actually just get it done. Those are the last couple of fire minions. Left side Phoenix gone. Mid falls as well. Fire Giant's been reset by the Jade Dragons, though. LASBRA has stuck with the damage, by the way, Myth. Only the bubble at the very end of the build, but the rest of it damaging for this Athena jungle.
Yeah, and even just hovering behind the Leviathans has got to generate so much threat. The Leviathans constantly thinking, where is LASBRA? We know he's on the left somewhere. How do we deal with it? If we send people over, all of a sudden the Jade Dragons can either pull fire or initiate on us. Just positioning from LASBRA, so threatening.
Zapman, is that all Laz? Is that Laz and fire minions that have worked down Zapman's health bar? So difficult. Zap to step anywhere forward. You're right. Wow, just passive fire minions rolling into the base of the Leviathans. And that really sets the stage, doesn't it? Now the Jade Dragons have so much less to worry about. If and maybe even if not, they get this fire giant. The end of this game could be simple. Dragons do indeed get the FG. It's enhanced this time, and a taunt finds its way onto Gabe, who will have to cauldron away. But Nika, as we've expected, buying all the space in the world for the Dragons carries. Dardez alongside LASBRA. Nika found another. It's a killing spree for the Hercules. This one might be striking midnight unless Adapting makes a miracle play. He'll take one with him, but a double kill from Dardez. A killing spree at the end of the game. And a 2-1-6 from LASBRA on Athena jungle somehow doesn't do it justice. It's been a frontline massacre for the Jade Dragons on their way to a win here in Game 3.
Yeah, I hesitate to even say that it's Mike on the hell. You know, that seems like the headliner, this new pick on the healing patch. You'd want to talk about it. It's LASBRA and Nika. They do everything. Nika in the team fight, creating space, and LASBRA just doing all the damage and controlling the early game, outpacing, adapting out of the jungle. On a Guardian jungle at that, up against an Assassin. Not something you're used to seeing. The Jade Dragons, I think the only thing the same from last season is the name. Otherwise, that is a completely different play style from this team. Just heavily objective focused, play it slow, drag out these team fights around objectives. Death of 1,000 cuts, it looks like there for the Leviathans.
Drag on these team fights. Yeah, baby. And it's head coach Sam getting his first win as coach of the Jade Dragons here on LAN. Good start to the season for this new-look Jade Dragons team. Really seemed to figure it out, right? I mean, it took a little bit for us to get there. The Leviathans looking pretty consistent and clean early in this set. We were wondering if Gabe was just going to run everyone over.
It looked like it for a little bit.
Back down to earth a bit in Game 2. Game 3, the Jade Dragons recenter. And they'll take the set, and they'll move themselves on to a best-of-5 tomorrow. That's it for our second set of the day. 2-1 to the Jade Dragons over the Leviathans, and the desk will break it down.
Yeah, nice little reverse sweep there for the Jade Dragons, losing out in game number 1, but bouncing back in game 2 and in game 3. And I think highlighted best there by Mifflin and Dave at the very end, where it's really the Nika and LASBRA show. You know, who cares about the whole healing nonsense we got going on? Let's just have our jungler and our soul laner really carry this one through it. great performance by Nika on the Hercules yet again. LASBRA, as mentioned, on the Guardian jungle, something that doesn't come out very often, something he brought out at World Championships whenever he was still playing with the Bolts. Looks great for them in game number 3 here. And the Jade Dragons, Trelly, they're the ones who are moving on to the second day of play.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Herc got picked twice. I mean, the first game I thought was very solid there from Nika. It was just the regrowth combo with how many pulls you can hit. I saw a couple of double boulders off the wall. Just a very disruptive pick that it didn't seem like the Leviathans had many answers to early on. And there's, everyone's highlighted LASBRA on this Athena. The global presence wasn't even used that much because the dash taunt and plenty of follow-up and good damage throughout was all that was really necessary. It just seemed like this game number 3 in particular, the Jade Dragons, were able to play their version of SMITE, and Leviathans had some answers, some decent plays, but it was just not enough. The front line of the Jade Dragons was unstoppable.
And Nika with these boulders, the one here up against Zapman, and the one right here at this Phoenix push as well.
Yeah,
Nika goes through, finds like almost, I think he found everybody with at least one tap of the boulder, maybe a 2-tap on a few different players outside there, and then LASBRA and Dardez coming for the cleanup kills after. And then he walks back in, gets another pickup. I mean, the buff that came to Hercules where his 1-2 or his 2-1 combo both got a little bit of reduction in cooldown. Add in the warrior passive, the builds going through, sitting near 40% by the end of that game. And every 7 seconds, he gets to walk up and just do that to anybody he pleases.
Yeah, as long as he's able to find that pull, you're going to be able to pull some relics. And I think that there was a lot of respect put in. Of course, I think a lot of the pressure was on Ronngyu saying, hey, if someone gets pulled in, drop that knock silence, he can't driving strike. And it happened a few times, but not enough. With the sheer volume of pulls that Nika was able to find. And, of course, the taunts, the setup there from LASBRA and Mike on the hell, making sure to cleanse his own team CC. It just seemed like a very well-executed composition that I think the Jade Dragons, I mean, if they didn't practice, they have it down pat now. It was a very clean game.
Yeah, Mike going with, I believe it was Hell, then Nox, and then Hell again to kind of round this one out. So we're seeing a little bit of the Hell support pop through. We've been hearing a lot of waves talking about some of these new healer supports coming through. We saw the Horus a little bit earlier on the day as well. Haven't seen an Aphrodite yet, but that's because no team has let the Aphrodite through. And maybe based off the performance we've seen so far out of some of the lesser healers in that regard, maybe hope that we don't see that. Talking about Mike, who's been able to bring the Hell support out, let's get a moment to talk to Mike. He's standing by for our post-game interview with Dave.
That's right. I got PolarBearMike support for the Jade Dragons with me. And Mike, I'm sure it was a lot of fun getting in here with a new team. How'd that win feel?
It felt pretty good to me. How'd it feel watching it?
Yeah, it felt pretty good, Mike. I think I really enjoyed watching this new style of the Jade Dragons. Felt like you and LASBRA were able to slot in with the 3 members of the Oni Warriors from last year really effectively. And it was a good time. I had a lot of fun casting it. Do you have anything else for me?
Back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, back to you as well. Yeah.
We had head coach Sam in here. He was rocking the Jade Dragons
Great
outfit.
guy.
Is he the most dragony dragon on the Jade Dragons?
He's definitely got the most drip, I can tell you that. I mean, no doubt the drippiest dragon.
That's right. Talk to me actually though a bit, because I know you've gone through roster changes as a Jade Dragons player over the last couple of years, but this is probably the largest overhaul that you personally have gone through in the last couple of years at least.
Yeah.
Have you felt like you've had to adapt your play style from Jade Dragons of 8 and Jade Dragons of 9 to now Season 10 Jade Dragons?
It is really unfamiliar for me in a good way. Like, this is the first time since Season 4, I think, when I initially joined United, that I've played on a team where nobody has been a former teammate of mine, 4 totally new teammates. Cherry I played with, he's a coach. Like, no one cares what he says.
He's not wearing a dragon outfit.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been very refreshing, like a different perspective, I think, for both sides. Like, I think of the game very differently than maybe they're accustomed to, and I've definitely, I mean, I'm still trying to learn what they want to do, how they want to do it, that type of stuff, but it definitely a very different perspective and a new challenge for me to improve in ways maybe I wouldn't have thought of as much before. So I'm really enjoying it so far.
Do you feel like it's almost a melting pot in a way of god pools? Because it looked like Dardez was sticking with what a lot of Dardez was playing anyway. LASBRA pulls out the Athena support, which was what LASBRA was playing, things like that last year on the Bolts. Do you think you guys kind of have this god pool identity that you're trying to make work in a new group of 5?
I think our identity throughout the year will be that any character that you play against that you think is really annoying and toxic, we love them. Like, that's pretty much what we do. So it'll just depend, like, who thinks their gods are really strong. Draft is definitely something that, every team is always working on and trying to figure out what they want to do in a specific meta or whatever. Dardez, he's a bit of a merchant right now. Just given that he's on ping and stuff,
Sure.
which is not for much longer, which is fine. He has like 3 characters he can play. He got 2 of them today. He is pretty awful on everything else.
Understood.
So yeah, we're just trying to make that work as much as we can.
A headache for Coach Sam to.
There's not much for
figure it
Sam
out.
and Cherry to work with. Let's say that.
They'll figure it out. You guys, a good Game 3 win. Excited for the Jade Dragons of this year, and the desk will take us home.
So you heard it here from Mike. If you hate playing against it, they're probably going to play it if they're given the opportunity to do so. So it's not just Mike, it's the whole of the Jade Dragons, maybe the new villain of the SPL with some of the picks they've brought out here. But no, a little bit to kind of pull from that interview with Mike, with one of their players still playing on ping, play things that are still comfortable, at least for Dardez at the time being, the Hera, the Muzen Cobb, something he was playing a lot in the prior season, so no reason to pull away from there. But look at our bracket. We've already sent our first 2 teams home from the kickoff tournament, the Styx Ferryman earlier on from a 2-0 for the Hounds. Now the Atlantis Leviathans in a 3-game set will be leaving as well. That means now we have the Hounds and the Jade Dragons facing off tomorrow in a best-of-5 set. See who's going to move on to that grand finals, have that opportunity to be that #1 seed to start picking these divisions for at least to hold that on for the remainder of our phase. But it means we still have 2 more sets to go today, Charlie. 2 more best-of-3s. Camelot Kings and Gilded Gladiators will be up next as those players get set up and ready to move into their set. And then we'll close out our day with the Highland Ravens and the Oni Warriors.
And this is what we're talking about. It's already so early on in the tournament we're seeing games like that. I mean, we didn't know if we were going to get to see those 3-game sets. We were curious if these teams are going to understand the meta as much as each other, and I think we got a great look. I'm excited to see what comes next, right? Because I think we have not established a set like top pick, top ban. Of course, Aphrodite getting banned is pretty, obvious, and the Emoji as well. But besides that, not too much just yet that everyone is sort of getting on board with. There's games with Athena Jungle that can win pretty effectively. The Hercules is coming back into fruition. There's a lot of picks that I'm excited to see as the tournament continues.
Yeah, a lot of shift-ups in the meta already. Nothing truly established just yet. But we got a couple more sets to go for the remainder of today. Some more best-of-3s around the corner, so make sure you stick around. We'll be right back for our 3rd set.